All right, here we go. I guess we better go live on YouTube. See if we can't get this going on. Bubble Man's World. Public. Let's do this. Let us do this. Oh, wow. We got people popping in left, right, and center. I haven't even gone live yet. This is cool. This is the new way to do things in 2020. We're just setting up the YouTube meeting, guys. It should go live here in a second, and I will introduce you. Hopefully we're all gravy. A little bit rusty on this 2020 Hash Church first of the year. Just waiting for Zoom to, there we go. Set up the YouTube video. All right, I'm gonna link that into the old YouTube chat, and then I will get to, here we go, and boom, there you guys go. Welcome, guys.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear you great. Jack is on mute. I think I have it set up so when you come in, it automatically mutes you.
Okay, there you go.
There you go, dude.
All right.
Welcome, guys.
Good morning, sir.
Very cool to have both of you guys in first, because you're kind of my, Etienne's been a frontline guy for a long time at Berkeley's patient group, doing the good work. Jack has also now, how many years has it been, Jack?
Well, that I've been doing this work, I've been working where I am for about the last 5 years.
Yeah, exactly. 5 years. Maybe you want to give us a little bit of a lowdown on what you've been doing, because Jack's new to you guys, but Jack is certainly not new to me. Jack and I go back far, like 20 plus years. We worked in the cannabis industry together. I came out from Winnipeg and I met him, and we just kind of clicked right away. He was kind of a little bit of an aggressive character at the time, but I really liked it. It was kind of Winnipeg-esque and made me feel like I was at home. And give him a little lowdown on what you've been up to, obviously for the last 5 years, but also a little bit in regards to how you got there.
Okay. Hey, well, thanks for the intro, Marcus. Definitely, where Marcus and I met was definitely the 90s in Vancouver, when there was that time when all of us were busy. From there, I, like a lot of people in the business, I had my own personal difficulties, and through those, I ended up leaving Vancouver and coming over here to the island. And I did that quite a while back, and in trying to heal myself. I did a lot of things that involved cannabis, and at the same time, I ran a volunteer-based mobile needle exchange in the streets of Victoria. So,
well, tell them a little bit about kind of how you went down the road and got into drug addiction and where you ended up, because that really sets the story. And I'm sure it might be a little bit sensitive to talk about. No, you don't have to share everything, but get into that a little bit, because, dude, you lived some serious shit that really, in my opinion, led you to do the work that you're doing today.
Yeah, you're right. You're right, Marcus. I mean, for me, just like a lot of people, I think I came out to BC from Ontario, and I got out in the cannabis scene like any 20-year-old who wants to go out and make their own way. And I became very successful at that, as how Marcus and I met. And once you kind of get to a certain level in the cannabis world, you're no longer just dealing with people who are only in the cannabis business. And through that, I found that I was just not a happy person. I got all the things in life that I was supposed to get, physical things, things that I was taught that would help me to feel better. And when I didn't feel better when I had those things, I turned then to the other drugs that I was involved with the business of. And that, for a long time, that made me stronger. That made me seem like my average friends, and nobody really knew about it, because I was making enough money to hide what that was. And I went on that way for probably a solid decade. And I guess in that world, I just experienced even further traumas. It made me want to do the things that I do now to try to challenge what drug policy exists, because I always felt like it was the criminalization of cannabis that ended me up meeting into a world that I really had no exposure to. I grew up as a little hippie kid selling hash to university students, and eventually that became such a big thing that I was involved in the smuggling business, and then that involved, of course, all the other things that come with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, well, for me, I always felt like cannabis was always a healthy part of my life. It was always something that I came back to when I needed to gather myself. So, I mean, I don't know what else you want to talk about,
Well, I
Marcus.
mean, you know what? I guess that was good, but it leads into, so listen, Jack had some problems. He got addicted to some drugs. And when I say he got addicted to drugs, Jack excelled at being addicted to drugs. When I saw him at the end, he was literally on Main and Hastings, like in the worst situation. I'm telling you, it's a death sentence when you end up down there. Very, very, very few people go down there and come back from it. Okay. So not only did Jack come back from that, he started doing what he's doing in Victoria right now. And that's what I was getting to, wanting you to tell us about, with the work that you're doing now, based on the experiences that you had using cannabis to help other people who are in your current situation get back.
Okay, great. Because that's an easy story. You know what I mean? I basically, I came over here. I was real quiet, and in order to kind of get my own head back together, I wanted to learn what it was to do something for nothing. So I volunteered my time in a needle exchange that served food and shit. Because I wanted to find out what it was, why people were nice to each other. I think, and through that experience, it led me to. That was in a different health services agency, and then I was called by this group called Solid, which at the time only had one staff member and a shit ton of volunteers. And their story was like, a lot of their members their story was very similar to mine. Where so for years we just did the mobile needle exchange. We went out and did that, and as everybody knows, the opioid crisis is a real problem. And so I ran an agency of people with lived experience of either current or past experience with drug use. And through that, we started doing overdose prevention work. We started the very first temporary overdose prevention site here in Victoria. And we kept doing more of the same thing. Now we run the harbor. That's the equivalent of what you guys have in Vancouver is Insight. And through running these types of projects, I've been able to show people how cannabis is an effective tool in a harm reduction toolbox. So when I'm running a needle exchange and giving you clean needles, when I'm giving you Narcan kits, in case of the worst case scenario, I also always wanted to be able to give people cannabis, because for me, that was the thing that always I never succeeded at government detox or rehab centers, but I always succeeded when I gave myself time and space and time to reflect in the plant, so I wanted to be able to do that for others. And so, we started just giving away edibles and joints on weekends here. So it started out with maybe only about 80 people. They were all street entrenched drug users in the downtown core. And so I would always say to them, I probably know that you won't try this until that day when your dealer wouldn't turn on his phone, and you're really sick. And then when that happens, I really want you to take the edible. And I want you to tell me what happens. And so we just gave out joints and edibles within the scene, and we started doing secondary stream research with the University of Victoria. So if I was to say, Marcus, tell me about your drug use, and you tell me, hey, I do an 8 ball of cocaine a day. So then you would check in weekly to let me know after a week of me giving you 80 milligrams of an edible and a joint or two, how that impacted your patterns of behavior. And we got a lot of very positive feedback from that. So we expanded the program. We reached out to people who are large online vendors, and they started to give us more product to give to people. And so we got up to having about 200 members and 5 days a week, 4 hours a day, where the service was running. And about 6 months ago, we were able to move and get a storefront that was separate from our administrative office. So now I have a service open 7 hours a day. It's an at-cost cannabis service for members only. You either have to be a person of lived experience with illicit drug use or on government assistance like a disability or old age or of Aboriginal descent. Those are the only people I let into the program because those are the people who are most disproportionately affected by opioid death totals. So I know that the community safety unit has a complaint and has had from for about the last month and a half, but they still haven't come to us to give us the lecture about shutting down, because I am working in conjunction with the chief medical officer here, who is working as a kind of lobbyist with us, with the Minister of Health, because the harbor and the other injection services that I run have government exemptions that allow for drug use in those areas. Obviously, heroin is still illegal, but where we work, it's accepted that we have to pass drugs back and forth. There has to be an exemption that allows for that. And I am negotiating with the province to extend that exemption over our cannabis programs, to recognize that our cannabis programs are an element of our life-saving services that we provide. We also do other things like run a drug checking project. So any person who does casual drugs on the weekend, or any hardened addict, has access to mass spectrometry and real information about what's in their drugs. I run all these services together in one place, and I feel like that's the main reason that my cannabis service has not been shut down yet, is because I'm not a dispensary. You can come in and see that the same thing that's $20 in the dispensaries all over the city is $5 where we are. I have 8 or 9 staff that work for me just in the cannabis programs, in the production, attaining, and distribution of those things. So the only money that we make off cannabis is that to pay the salaries of the people who are there. And everything else we give away. So I've gone to where when we started, we made maybe, $100 a day, because there is no price. It's just a donation. When you come in, Marcus, maybe one day you have no money. Maybe one day you have $4. Some days you leave me money, some days you don't. But in the end, you leave the service with something every day. So that's kind of the loose parts of how it works,
Yeah. I wanted you to come and share this story because I know there's a lot of good people in the community that will want to get behind it and support it. And I know I've, tried to facilitate and do whatever I can for it, because it really is the good work. And you are such a unique person to be doing it. You're literally, I just love, you're like, oh, I wanted to see why people were nice to each other. Like, how honest is that? If people knew who you were 20 plus years ago, it would just be like, wow, like this guy has matured. He has like grown as a human being. He's been through hell and back, and then back to hell and back again. And you're just kind of shining. You're doing super good things. You're helping people. And you can tell that your experience is directly effective in the efficiencies of the program, because you know what it's like to be a drug user. You know, when you talk to them, look, I know you're not going to eat this edible, but at one point in time, their dealer's not going to answer their phone. That dealer's going to get busted. He's going to lose that phone. Something's going to happen. And that is the moment when those drugs are not going to be available. And that is the moment when you get that edible and that joint into their hands. And it's just such it's just such good work, dude. I'm proud of you. Like, I'm really proud of you.
I really appreciate that, man. And you're right. Like, the reason that I do those things is because If I give you a joint and an edible today, and next week you end up in jail and you get out and you have no ID, your welfare has been cut off, I can help you with that too, you know. And that way, when you get those things back together, you get a little bit more stable, and maybe you need some other kind of help. You feel like that you can ask us for it and that we'll deliver it. And I think that's the strength of the service, and it's why that I connected. Like primarily, we work from health authority contracts. That's kind of what protects me in the services that I run, is that I work essentially for the man in a lot of ways. But then this, I love the opportunity about how, I don't know, if anybody's ever been a drug user, you know how it is. Like there's a point when you're ready to tap out, and if people aren't ready to help you at that point, you kind of miss that opportunity. And sometimes months or years can go by before somebody feels like they're in a position again where they want to make changes, you know?
Yeah, and
And
recognizing though that time is the key, right? Like who but a drug user who's gotten out of it can recognize it's the time.
yeah, and this is like a tool that allows us to have that conversation every day with people. You know, when they come in for their joint and their edible, you can really have a chance to check in with them. You can really have a chance to make changes in their lives, like the ones that I've been able to make for myself. You know, I just try to offer the supports that I wish would have been there for me a decade ago.
And this is why today for 2020, I wanted to start with a story about realness and truth, and not get right into cannabis 2.0 and license productions and regulations and blah, blue, blee, blah, blue, because I know that the majority of the people that I invite into these rooms, although some of us, many of us are going down these pathways and checking out alternative pathways, we still all come from the foundation, from the place that you are in right now. So know that in the Hash Church panelists and the Hash Church congregation, you have an incredible amount of support. And with that, I would like to introduce the Hash Church congregation, because Jack and I got right into it, and we have Etienne in the room as well, who came in right off the bat. We've got Johnny B, who's smoking a fatty and taking dabs, as Johnny B would be doing. We've got Mr. Skunkman Sam, looking very dapper today. What do you got, a lizard on your head today? That's nice. Colin is in from Vessel, from Happy Valley. He's sideways today. I don't know why. Maybe he's got to turn his phone sideways. I see Wade is in the house. I don't see his video on, but welcome, Wade. And welcome to the Dragonfly Earth Medicine crew. To Josh and Kelly are in the house. Dr. Mark is also in the house, and we'll be getting into some pretty interesting conversations where I'm sure he'll be dominating for at least an hour straight. So be prepared for that. Get out your pens and your papers. And then, of course, my good friend and colleague, Mike West, is in the room. We got Sable Shen from Hanu Labs, another great guy doing good work and opening great dialogues. And then another super righteous dude is in the house. We got Boo Williams in the house right now. And all I see Boo doing is good. I just see him going and giving people water and delivering food and giving out clothes and buying gifts for kids, and just like, so there is an incredible group of people in the room today. We're just going to go for an organic dialogue as per usual. If anyone wants to chime in, feel free. There's no direction to the conversation. I just wanted to thank each and every one of you for showing up today, as well as all of the people who are watching on YouTube right now. We got almost 500 people watching live right now. So Hash Church still got it.
Hey, Jack, as somebody who has worked needle exchange, thank you very much for your dedication and your hard work, because, yeah, you need people in the trenches, especially those that have done it and who need it. And you never know when it's somebody's time in need. So people, look for a needle exchange. Go out there, help people out. Do some volunteering, and look at Jack. And Jack, you need any volunteers to come help you out? Where can they come find you and help you?
You can find our services, the Solid Outreach Society at 1056 North Park in Victoria. That is the side where our outreach office and our cannabis services exist. Our administrative office is at 1804 Cook Street, just around the corner from the store. And yes, we always are looking for people. people have lived experience. That is the first qualification before anything else.
I just wanted to say, Jack, we've talked on the phone
Yeah.
quite a bit. It's great to talk to you. Great to see you, man. You know, and the work that you're doing, and it really touches heart because I've been down the path, and I talked with a lot of people here in the downtown Vancouver East Side, and worked at didn't work actually. Really rephrase it. Did talks at Carnegie Hall with Dr. Hornby on harm reduction, and right now we have Neil Magnuson doing the same thing here in town with the Cannabis Substitution Project. And Neil's killing it, and he's also got his show Truth, Hope, and Courage, and he's really, really doing the same focus of what you're doing here in Vancouver. And we're seeing this in different parts of the world, actually, too, overseas. There's some other people we've talked about. Can't think of the name right now, but it's just great work that you guys are doing. Like, we all support, so thanks.
Oh, thanks for bringing up Neil. Actually, the reason that we started calling our program the Cannabis Substitution Project, because we hired a person from Vandu, Howard DeJong, and he came over and told us about Neil. And that's how it really started. Is we were just sitting like this, puffing on my couch, and he was telling the story, and I just decided, I think I'll stop selling weed and let's just start giving it away instead, and that's honestly how it began. And what we're trying to do is make it so that Neil and Sarah and other people who are doing the same, what we've done is we've actually built a society. It has a board.
Nice.
I have a staff, I have managers. I can show on paper how that you create cannabis at such a cost that you can employ people, but still give out hundreds of donations into the community a day. And that's the thing. The chief medical officer here really wants to make the program migrable, to migrate it to places. So I want to take all these extra tools that I have with research connections that I have and hand them over to people like Neil and Sarah so they can expand their services. So instead of like once a week having 700 people line up on Hastings to come get their thing from Neil, I want to give Neil my playbook and say, here, Neil, this is what we did, and actually make it so that there is this subsidized area of the market. As Marcus said, there's people in this forum who have the access to go and investigate the LP world as it sits right now. The people who I serve, there's just no way that they could be served by that.
Yeah,
so
I'm going to say, like, when I volunteered at the Green Cross, I was a members rep, stuff like that. And then we worked on donations. And when people come in with 50 cents and we would get them some, it would be a bottom of the bag, whatever. We always made sure that, and those are beginning stages of working. And it was basically harm reduction in those first clubs and stuff like that.
Yep.
That's what they all were based around.
Yep.
And we saw that, and it was really good. And we saw it kind of fade away with all of the legal dispensaries opening up and stuff like that. But now we're starting to see that come back because truly, it needs to give back. And I'm just sitting here on memory. I can keep going on with you. You can just start talking. So
I know, because it is kind of like what Hillary did in the beginning, and the kind of support that Marcus and others in the community gave. Like, there was no way that Hillary could afford the massage therapist.
So couldn't afford that. The herbalist that I went to and saw from there, stuff like that. I was at the BCS. I went through those whole programs because, I was injured. I was hooked on pharmaceutical drugs. Same thing, no difference. Went through the whole stages of the whole harm reduction, learned the 4 pillars. That's all went through Sam Sullivan and stuff like that with the downtown east side, what you're doing at Vandu and all that. And so there was a big part of that between 86 and 88, 89, 90. And I think you and me touched bases on that. And that's when we started seeing that explosion. So
because as you know, like it's just natural that people kind of corrupted the model that was brought forward, like in a true medical access, because obviously the plant is a medicine, and access, not giving access, is ridiculous. But
gets me up every day.
I just wanted to make sure that in the changing landscape that is the LP world, that the people that I work with wouldn't be forgotten, and there would be space given to people like yourselves, like myself, people like, how did you, like when people would say to me, how did you help solve the opioid epidemic? this is what I would want to say. I brought people who understand that drug policy is garbage, you know what I mean? And understand that problems are solved from within community.
Dude, and when there's no solution to the system, you require a new system. And that's why what you're doing is so cool, man, because you're just doing something completely different that actually works.
And I knew people like yourselves would agree and get on board. And that's why I did it. My biggest supporters so far, I hope they don't mind me saying, has been the NCC, the National Compassion Club, and Twisted Extracts. Those have been two companies which have made it possible for me to have staff, make it possible. Like, give me, when I could say, you know what, I need double the donations you give me.
So
For them to do that.
Is it the adversity that you face that made it so, like, why don't you just do what 90% of people do and just go online and bitch and moan and cry about the system and how it's not really taking care of you? Like, I just find it amazing why people choose that over just, like, you can make change by doing little things. Not that what you're doing is little, but it started little and it's growing bigger, and now no one can deny it. It's like the most ridiculous thing to try and deny that drug users can be helped on and not just helped on the level of, like, how we used to say, oh, cannabis will increase the quality of your life, you know, while you're doing chemo and while you're passing away. No, it can actually shrink the tumors out of existence. It can actually help you rid yourself of these addictions. Johnny B, how much oxycodone were you taking every day?
280 milligrams a day of OxyContin, fast-acting super dolls of another 40 grams, and then I had 10 milligrams. My prescription drugs were $1,488 a month. I was hooked on heavy pharmaceutical drugs that led into heroin. I went through these whole stages, and that's why it was easy when I started talking with Jack, when he started doing this, going back a couple years. I mean, we touched bases, tried doing things with the getting future, trying to get all these different little mechanisms set up so we can actually supply joints to all these people that were in need.
It's just good.
It's a great feeling to see when people actually give back and stuff like that. Like myself, I'm always trying to help people. I don't know how to help people, so I want people to just grow their own. How do I do that? By starting a YouTube channel and working with everybody and just kind of giving back as much as you can to the plan. It's just kind of,
it's the only thing that doesn't create a gaping hole in your life. Jack said it. He had everything. He had every physical kind of thing he required, and he was left feeling empty, you know, because that's not what makes you feel great in life. Please catch this. I might even make it full screen just for this one thing. Okay. What is your, oh, I lost my train of thought. That sucks. That was an important one too.
Connection to other people.
Well, is the true value of life is not taking, it is giving and doing for other people. It's giving and doing and helping. That is where you start to feel that warm glow inside. And the more you do it, the better you feel. Sure, you have to be careful in this world navigating, because there are, you know, literally sharks out there that will consume you whole. But that's not to say you can't
surrounded by them.
Yeah, you can help. I mean, look at the work that this guy's doing. It's incredible.
Honestly, my next where the next thing that I'd love to do, that I think will be of the greatest benefit for both communities, the community I serve and the community at large, is to start what I would call a therapeutic space, which is actually a grow area. Because I
want to create like this medi center where you can have a place where you can grow your own, and you have a place where you can actually learn about cannabis education, how to get off a certain, like there's got to be more of a place where there's a place where people who truly want to learn and need and can't get better. Like there's certain times, like I was saying, like, I mean, we have legalization. It's going to be nice when you start seeing those forms of extracts that I use every day that are going to be offered to patients. Because this is going to be the biggest thing, is going to be those extracts. There's high concentrations of THC that, you know, that we need, right, that are needed for patients and stuff like that. So I mean,
yeah, I agree, Johnny. We do cannabis education classes, and I think having the physical garden there, I mean, everybody here has been in a garden. You know 100% the value of standing in your room when the lights turn on and all the plants are praying. Like you know what that does for you as a human. And I think to give that experience, instead of just teaching people to come and be needy and here's a joint and here's an edible. That's not what I want to do. I want to create a community where they can come in the days they feel good enough to water a plant or pull some leaves or whatever task it is that they're contributing to the medicine that they're getting. And then also for the community at wide, right? For the grannies who think, I can grow 4 plants and I could do that for those people. Well, then you could come into our community garden and I could show you how to take a cutting, and we could talk about how you...
And we can give those cuttings away. We get people growing their own. I've been saying it for so long, it's insane. Grow your own grow 4, just grow.
Yeah, this is our way to overcome some of the shitty rules that exist in the LP system, I think. If we band together as a community to solve a problem that exists. Cannabis is it's health services, you know?
Yeah.
And if we could use the money from that to help stem the tide of the opioid epidemic, then we could look at ourselves and know that we help do that with the plant. It just seems like that's something that I could really get behind, and that's why I hope the next steps will be when we get ahead with a little bit enough money that we'll be able to get this therapeutic area growing.
I'm going to help you with that too, because I'm all about people growing their 4. And I don't know if I started wegotyour4.com. I just want people to grow their own 4. And I want to hook you up with everything. I want to make sure you got your own 4. Go to your hydroponic stores, buy your stuff, go to your bond shops. Like, people need to start growing their own, because it gets you out of bed. It makes you feel better. You see that life come out of it. And the problem was, I got a lot of people who were so discouraged with it because they were overwatered doing certain things. But, you know, with a few good people, we came up with a good little system that 4 plants with LED lighting. You don't need AC units. You don't need DHUs. You might need to put in a humidifier, stuff like that. But education is the key. And Canada can grow 4. You go on Amazon, you go to a grocery store, I'm pretty sure Walmart, all these places are going to start carrying different systems and stuff like that. It's legal. Grow your own, you know? Like,
we have 12 to 1,400 members and growing every day. So I just think that times 4, if you give me a 5,000 plant count, and I'm pretty sure that we can pull an industrial space in the middle of downtown Victoria, and there you go. Bang, you're doing it. You know,
you can have 4 per household, but when you come down to, say, like apartment buildings or people I was looking at and see you have people who are living with, like, buildings that are full of people with HIV or different conditions, then you can have one in every damn apartment.
I think that we can manhandle rules. You know what I mean? Like, I would love to challenge the 4 plant in each household, because, you know, I have 1,400 members who don't have households. So where the fuck do you think you're supposed to put the
exactly.
plants?
That's the whole thing. Like, where are you going to grow?
They're homeless. They're homeless.
Per household, so, not everyone has a house.
I drove around in it was 2007. It was 2008 when they tore down my house. I had no place to live in my truck, and all I had was my 1 plant Medi Kush, and I would drive around with that in my truck. And there's pictures of it too. And I had nowhere to go with the plant, but I kept it alive. Then I went into someone's bathroom and stayed in there for a few days. Like, I carried this plant around with me, and then I did a video on it, and that was like, yeah, it's like, where do you go? Like, what do you do?
Amazing.
Yeah, it was a part of my life when I just got my license from Health Canada. They tore down my house. I was protesting, fighting WCB, and I kept that plant with me because it was the only strain that helped me so much. And I remember being behind a cop and putting it up on the dash so you could see it. And they just I had signs on my truck, Fight Works ABC, and they kind of let it go, you know what I mean? But always standing up for the plant. And that plant got me through. It took me to so many different places. The cannabis community that joins and holds you together was probably the biggest rewarding thing. And walking into that lab with Dr. Horn, yeah, you know what? Memories. 2020 is going to be explosive. You know what I mean? What we've seen happen over the last decade, and 2019 with legalization, and everybody's, you know, complaining about it. Like we say, grow your own. You know, 2.0 is going to be a different year. 2020, we got you 4.
Hey, Jack, we just wanted to say, you know, we really appreciate the work that you're doing, and we're backing you up. So what we're doing right now is we're gathering the Dem Cure Collective, which is a whole lot of farmers internationally We just gathered as a meeting of the minds at Heartwood Institute in Garberville, California. And this was a really big topic of conversation on how growers, producers, extractors, distributors, wherever you are in the world, how can we touch compassionate care? How can we touch children who need help? People who are financially struggling to be able to reach the plant, to be able to get a hold of it. So we're with you. We need to hook up and
amazing.
We have these conversations.
I really appreciate meeting you in this format. I've watched you lots of times, on the church, and I just feel privileged that Marcus would have me in, because usually this is a pretty high level tech of weed, type of format conversation. And so I was a little bit nervous to even though this is the kind of shit that I have to do all the time for work, and it's nice to hear back from the people who you've watched thinking like, I know this can work, because when I watch you talk, when I don't know who you are, I feel like that you would want to help with this. And when that comes to fruition, it gives me confidence that the ideas I had 5 years ago, walking around picking up needles on Needle Exchange, and how to incorporate people in the cannabis business into the unfolding landscape of changing drug policy, and how we could use the opioid epidemic.
Did we lose him? I think we lost him.
Yeah, I think we did.
He'll be back. That was pretty good timing, nonetheless. Like, he got to say almost everything.
It's really important. It's really important. I mean, it's kind of like when there's hungry people. You can give them a fish and feed them for a day, or you can teach them how to fish and give them a fishing pole, and they can be self-sufficient if they have a home to grow in.
It's true. It's a nice thing to teach people. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It's just a nice thing. And I found over the years, just from growing cannabis, especially as, my kids grew up around it, it gave them not as much interest in cannabis, but it gave them interest in growing. They were just like, hey, can we grow like food? Can we grow other things? And so we'd start buying seeds and planting peppers and cucumbers and lettuce and all these other different things. And it's definitely a good thing. I mean, you always kind of hear the stories of what would happen if, you just couldn't go to Safeway anymore and buy food. Well, what would happen would be that you would definitely want to have a seed collection and start being able to grow some food.
Sacred thing would happen.
And the best thing you can do is help out others that can do nothing for you. And that is the best feeling in the world. Passing on love, passing on knowledge, and educating people that will only help them better themselves. It's the best feeling ever.
It is true.
It's really amazing what an incredible catalyst this plant is. It continues to catalyze and point in directions, and it is illuminating areas that have been dark for a really long time. It's illuminating big ag, big pharma, all of the problems, politics, polycorporatics is what, the word that I've been using lately. And I just think that this plant is here to save the world. And I think that we are the medicine makers, and we are the people that need to talk about it and bring this plant out into, regular mainstream world, so that everybody can jump on, because I know that you all know that this cannabis culture is international, and we connect on a very, very deep level only because of this plant. And I think it's phenomenal.
Absolutely. It's a unique plant in the sense that there is this underlining, like, it seems to affect compassion and humanity and empathy, and really sort of produce it in people. And that's one of the reasons why, when everyone's so concerned about, like, I don't know, evil cops and lawyers and judges all because, taking over the cannabis industry, I'm like, bro, they are messing with a power that is so much more powerful than any. They fought it for decades. They spent billions of dollars. They destroyed tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of lives, and they lost to a plant. And so now they're going to lose again. They're going to try and make it corporate. They're going to try and be greedy. They're going to try and do all of these different things. But what they're not going to understand is that while you're handling this plant and breathing it in and being around it, it's going to affect the way you think. Promise. That's what I'm looking forward to. We said it years ago. My partner actually said it to me years ago, Martin Moravchik, who was one of the founders of Manitoba Harvest. Before Manitoba Harvest was started, we were growing a 5-acre hemp field just experimentally in 1995 just outside of Winnipeg. And I was quite young at the time. I remember I was maybe 21 years old or something, 21 or 22. And he said to me as we left the field in my van and we kind of looked back, and we had to hide the field also. It was not right on the highway, but he said, you know, this is going to change the way people think. And that wasn't even anything medical. That was just cannabis growing in acres in the prairies. And it truly did change the way people think. They started seeing it at the grocery store. They started consuming it. You know, they're putting it into their bodies. Is that affecting them? Of course it is. Absolutely. It's just a very unique plant that is like, it's viral in the sense that it just gets out there. And these people that think they're going to cage it and control it, I think that they'll see it'll work about as well as their prohibition did.
The Mayan prophecy also states that a flower is what is going to save this modern culture, these modern people, a single flower. And it makes a whole lot of sense to me that this is going to be the thing that saves the world.
On that note, D, 420K, can I get a...
Bong rip, mother lovers.
Oh, dude, right on. Jack's got his little girl. Just in time.
Nice.
For a little bong rip, mother lovers. You know how long I've been waiting for that? It's kind of funny. You just kind of created like the motto or whatever it is, you know, between you and Dr. Mark with his Hash Church song. That was also pretty classic. Pretty classic. Really nice to be gathering with all of you. I haven't heard
I'm being quiet right now because I'm trying to put dry sift on.
Well, I'm just going to say aloha and happy New Year's, everyone.
Happy 2020.
Dude, are you in Hawaii?
He's in Hawaii.
Aloha on that one. So big aloha to you.
Yeah.
I'm on Maui, yes.
That's what's up.
Aloha, I'm jealous.
I was able to get legal cannabis here too because
Wow.
I have a California cannabis card. And if you submit to Hawaii, which I did last Saturday night, and on Monday I had my card. So I actually went to the dispensary and bought cannabis and carts and all kinds of stuff just to see what their program is like here on the island.
Maine does that as well, just north of me, and it's really nice because it allows people to check out different growers and different processors and really learn about what everybody's doing. It's really quite nice.
Yeah, I would say the cannabis here is circa 2004, 2005 California. It's not yet. It's got a ways to go. They don't have many people coming, so the cannabis seems to sit around a while. So the terps and everything are gone.
Wow.
They store it in these bottles that have a lot of oxygen and air in them. So
Like Canadian weed.
Exactly.
Like all Canadian weed, like all of it. I was like, how is it bone dry in a container? That just, sounds familiar up here.
Well, it's not bone dry. The prices are a little high, you know, because they have to grow it and produce it. On top of that, such as their oil here is a black sludge because they can't use BHO or anything else, so they use alcohol. So it has that wonderful 2003 sludge flavor. On top of it, on that, their dabbables as well are black sludge because, again, they can't use BHO. That's a class 3 felony here. So in Hawaii, you need to work on your laws here to get better medicine. But the growers really just got to.
You can actually use alcohol and do a really fast wash in an ultrasonic machine, like for 30 seconds or less than a minute, and you come out with absolutely beautiful golden oil.
Did you hear that, Hawaii? Did you hear that?
Hawaii? That's a bomb that just got dropped on Hawaii.
Wash.
Hopefully the whole state
Super
will
cold.
You don't get it all. You only
water.
get like 3/4 of the available THC.
That's such a boring problem.
What's that, Mike?
No, it's such a boring problem making light colored oil. Yeah, there's plenty of ways of doing that. You just chill your solvent down, right? You could use filtration. There's lots of ways of making nice oil.
Charcoal,
the fact that they're
right?
making dark oil, it just says that, yeah, they're a little behind times.
Well,
yeah,
it's like farmers.
they're bootstrapping it. So, I mean, they still haven't caught up to technology, as well as I don't think they get out to the shows to see what technology's out, you know, much less what a roto-vape is.
But what about the actual cannabis culture there, Etienne? Like, you must know people that are like born and bred, living there, like that are growing beautiful herbs and like.
And I have beautiful herb that is much better than what's grown there. And I've known people who've been living here for decades. So I get good herb here and get a good hash. But it's just the system itself. There's 2 dispensaries on the island. So there's only 2 grows, and they have to grow and produce what they produce. So not only do they have to produce it, they have to extract it, they have to package it, they have to put it in the bottles, and then, you know, get it to shelf. So it's still very limited in supply. I would say 10 types of herb, 3 types of hash, 3 types of cartridges. They're not allowed edibles here, which is different from when I got married in Alaska. They now are allowed to have concentrates, where they started off with edibles, couldn't have concentrates. Now they have concentrates, whereas here in Hawaii, there are no edibles. And that's a problem for people. They do have pills, which are popular, but no edibles.
They also do allow home growing, though, a certain number of plants, correct?
Yes, I think it's 4 plants.
We wanted to take a minute to big up the Hawaii Cannabis Expo. Dana Ciccione, and he just invited us to come, and we're going to be doing a presentation on preserving aloha through regenerative cannabis agriculture. And it's just amazing. Like, we've been having unbelievable conversations, and we've seen some beautiful weed from Hawaii. We were just at the Emerald Cup and the Pakalolo farmers and a lot of the cooperatives that are going on there and all of the islands. We're going to be doing a Dem Pure Aloha Love Tour coming up, and we're going to go visit a whole bunch of farms, and the outreach is just massive. And we're going to go Kama Aina style. We're going to the farms. We're just going to go and visit. We're going to hang out. We're going to share some knowledge of the Hawaiian culture. And
some of our original inspiration, you know, was going to Kauai and being in the islands, and natural farming is a huge explosion and a wave of consciousness that's happening through cannabis right now, and a lot of that came into America from Hawaii. So there are a lot of amazing people on Hawaii growing. It's the system that's really kind of bunk. So, like, you know, having to be able to, it's actually kind of a blessing to be able to have an integrated system where you grow and produce all your own stuff. But if there's more people involved, you know, so you can get some, you know, different products on the table, that would be ideal.
Like never before, that community is reaching out to the international community, and it's really beautiful. So mahalo to all the Hawaii listeners out there, and mahalo nui loa to the Hawaii Cannabis Conference for inviting in regenerative practices, businesses, cultivation, extraction.
Right on. I love you guys. You guys are awesome.
Hey, speaking of, shout out to Get Thermal Cup, and I get Thermal Cup, and much love to everyone.
He's not coming in, but, you know, we were just at the Emerald Cup and met a lot of the family from Hawaii, and everyone is going to all the conferences. You know, it's just a matter of getting everything in place and creating what you want. You know, the people have to speak up.
I got to get down to the U.S. one of these days. There's definitely Hawaii, especially. I mean, that's just like a hop, skip, and a jump from Vancouver.
Well, a fellow named Chris Cole took my class a couple of years ago, and he's the, I think, product manager at a place called Maui Grown or something like that. He seems to be pretty knowledgeable on extraction, but yeah, it sounds like their hands are tied based on what regulation allows. Be interesting to see if they could actually get decent rosin, because I would certainly think that would be something that if BHO wasn't allowed, sort of like next best sort of flavorful extract that's at high, you know, terp extract you can get, and in a pretty safe process that doesn't involve flammable solvent would be bubble rosin. No.
I mean, it's probably more of an
Absolutely.
opinion than anything. I mean, I'll tell you, some of the tastiest, terpiest, loudest shit I ever put in a pipe was Sam's dry sift. And I think just because other people have never seen it, they don't think it exists. So they say things like, "Oh, well, live resin's the loudest you could possibly."
Well, just for commercial production, though, can that actually be something that's viable? Can you actually make a product that way reliably? And
well, I mean, Cuban Grower did. He seems to have a version of 99.9% heads.
It's all relative to what your customers are willing to pay.
Sure. That very limited supply, though. I mean, like, wouldn't you want to have a more robust process, kind of like what you guys run?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
the main difference between dry sift and water hash and flower rosin is dry sift, you get a very small yield from the plant. With water, you get a much higher yield.
Okay, but the thing that we haven't mentioned is that the way you grow, Sam, and your understanding of growing, you're like a plant whisperer. Your plants express themselves in a frightening way.
I grow in the ground. I know. Think that's really important. I grow biodynamically and organically in the ground. There's some with sun, yeah. And in Hawaii, they have a longer season. You can grow outdoors in Hawaii and grow really late narrow leaf drug varieties. They produce fantastic product, but it's not mass produced. People are growing small amounts of it, but it's not mass produced yet.
Yeah, we'll see one day maybe.
Hey Sam, I got a question around island produced weed. You know, like a lot of the Caribbean islands have very high calcium levels in the soil because they're basically coral or volcanic, but there's still a lot of calcium. Is there ways that you can counteract all the calcium richness in island soils?
So what do you want to do? You want to raise the pH, or is it the pH or the calcium?
No, I think it's just a high preponderance of calcium in the soil just totally screws up some varieties, and they're trying to solve that down in the Caribbean.
Well, they don't seem to have
add microbiology.
Yeah.
They don't seem to have that problem in Jamaica.
Yeah, I think it's because Jamaica, I'm not sure if it has to do whether it's a coral island or a volcanic island.
The Caribbean islands are coral based. So it has a higher coral reefs, which then turn into limestone, calcium carbonate. So that's generally going to make more basic. But one of the nice things about the tropics is there's world around in the tropics is cocoa coir. One of the things that is a big issue with coir is the salt ratio, but coir does act as a good buffer for calcium. But generally, Dragonfly hit the head on the nail. When you look at fungal dominant soils, in general, fungal dominant soils tend to be slightly more acidic. So, throwing compost with a lot of cocoa pith or cocoa husk is going to help kind of buffer some of the calcium chloride.
Compost and humic acid really makes a big difference.
There you have it.
Or mulch like your life depends on it. Become a mound farmer. Just like when you think you have too much on there, throw 10 times more of stuff on top of it and create a mound, and you'll be
when you think do mulch, there's not.
Old mulch is called compost.
Exactly. And then it turns into acids.
And the reason why we say mulch is because you're just putting the compost on top of the beds, on top of the plants. Cold compost is mulching, layer.
Yeah, it's true.
And even on Jamaica, there's a lot of different kinds of soil. So I mean, you got red dirt, you got the black dirt, you got the hard coral dirt, wet side of the island, dry side. So if you're on an island, you have to really use if you need to, you know, different parts of the island for different environments.
Dude, my favorite thing about Jamaica and generally any island and watching new people be like, I'm going to go and grow herb like in Jamaica or St. Lucia or wherever. And I'm just like, well, have you ever grown herb there before? Like, are you familiar?
Part of my prior life as an industrial scientist, we did a wood decay study on the island of Hawaii. As it turns out, Hawaii is an ideal place to study wood preservatives because of the fauna there. And what I noticed is that from one side of the island to the other, the stratigraphy or the geography or the geology, I guess that's the word I'm looking for, changed immensely. On one side of the island, we basically needed a chisel to put stakes into the ground. The island dirt or the soil was like so hard and almost impenetrable. And on the other side of the island, it was like floral and swampy and lush. It was just so different that it was just only literally, I think, maybe about like 20 or 30 miles from each other. It was just completely different geology.
So is that known as the leeward and the essentially in
Right.
sailing? In sailing,
Yeah. I think
it has to do with where the prevailing wind is.
Right,
So,
exactly.
So obviously, if you're an island, you get hit from a prevailing wind side. Generally, it's, you know, in the Atlantic Ocean, Caribbean, it's going to be facing the Atlantic. That wind is, that side of the mountain is going to have most of the moisture picked up and then deposited on the leeward side, I think it is, where the rain shadow sits.
Right,
Yeah,
and that's
really
where all
that's
the plastic ends up now too, right? That's where all the straws and the toothbrushes and the tampon wrappers and all the other disgusting shit ends up now too. Sorry.
Sam, what were you about to say? I thought you were trying
I was saying that when an island has a mountain in the middle, like Kauai, it's got, so there's the north side and the south side. The north side is much wetter than the south side, for example.
That's exactly what it was, Sam.
Interesting. So in terms of the islands, you know, let's take, you know, Antigua, for instance, who's got an interesting thing unraveling there. You know, coral has a lot of calcium deposit. Would it be best to dig up that soil and amend it? You know, what would your thoughts on going directly in the dirt and using amendments be?
I would 1,000% just build mounds on top of it and forget about what's happening below it, because what's happening below it's going to transform as soon as every worm in the area comes and all the nothing changes Earth like microbiology. So it's kind of simple. It's kind of just like, oh, especially in Jamaica, I mean, there's every kind of vegetation in the world. So what you'd want to do is just get a machete and just get stoked and just start getting all the different kinds of, leaves and stuff that you can, and then you find some goats around it, you throw some goat manure on there along with sticks. There's lots of sticks around, and the sticks are incredibly important.
And banana trees are always constantly shedding, and banana trees are really prolific around any tropical area. And when we were in Jamaica, we chipped up all of the banana and the bamboo that was down on the ground that was fresh and the brown. So we had a mix of green and brown. And within 2 weeks, we were directly planting inside of that chipped, mass, and the plants just took off.
And most zones have little deposits on the land somewhere of pretty decent soil, so you can kind of layer that on the top of whatever you've prepared as a bed. You can kind of use that as a starting off point for your transplanting, or even, get some of the top soil off and kind of pull it on top of the bed and sort of cap off what you've created organic matter wise. And then, the plant grows and you just keep doing it over the course of the year.
Or you could just take the material and make like a hole like this inside of the material, fill it with some nice dirt that you feel like has, a good proper ratio, good balance, and then plant a seed directly into there. And by the time that the plant matures, it's actually ready to consume.
It'll just
those much larger breakdown of material.
So the microbiology is breaking down over time, and it's interesting you said. I only have experience in Costa Rica growing actually crops in that particular climate, and it's similar but it's different because the soil down there is the biology is very different, but it has its own challenges. So it's great to hear that the layering technique is working for you guys in terms of Jamaica, because that, I've gotten a lot of questions from people in Antigua and things like that, and I don't have enough experience. So it's great we can have this dialogue here to share that information.
When I used to grow potatoes in California, I would just put the potato eyes for the next crop on the ground, cover them with about 3 feet of mulch, and the potatoes would root into the ground and just go right through the mulch. And then afterwards, I didn't have to dig up the tomatoes. I just had to pull the mulch off.
Wow.
That's kind of what I'm talking about with mound life. I mean, it's kind of a mentality. It's almost like you're just a mob gardener. You plant as much as you can on the mound and use it to your advantage. It also saves water. And these are not just techniques that work in Jamaica. Of course, like we've gone to Bali, Thailand, Southeast Asia, different places, Hawaii, all the islands. We're going again to Hawaii, like we said, so we're really excited. But these techniques are not really, they work everywhere. We're in British Columbia, we do it. We're looking all down the West Coast to Michigan, to Maine. Oh, I'm in Jamaica, I'm in Bali. It's working everywhere. It does change what you're layering. I mean, the biodiversity of your bioregion is what you're going to use. So we're just not really needing to bring amendments all over the place. We're using what we have there. And also plastic culture. I mean, Mark mentioned the word plastic, and plastic is really killing the earth, and it's really sad looking at modern agriculture use plastic so much. And again, layering and using mulch is the answer to plastic. It stops weeds from growing and it builds soil. I could go on forever about this.
But and we're super solutions orientated, but I just wanted to take one second to talk about a major problem. Hemp can save the world, but plastic culture, hemp cannot. So it's really important that we become intelligent on how we're planting this incredibly sacred plant that is what we were talking about earlier, going to save the world, is going to change people's minds. We need to do it in a way that's respectful to the earth.
Couldn't agree more.
The only thing that will stop plastic is for oil to get too expensive to make single-use plastic. Until oil is expensive, we will have plastic forever.
Damn, it's so sadly true, but we'll see.
Well, Dr. Mark had some interesting thoughts on plastic, I think, last time we were on the show. And if Mark, if you can elaborate a little bit more on the knowledge you have with using hemp. Last time we talked, you had some really interesting thoughts about that, and I was wondering if you could share some more of that.
It looks like Mark is not with us at the moment.
Oh no!
No, did he bounce? Yeah, I remember him. I thought he was the one talking about how hemp plastic is not.
He felt like it was viable. He had some very interesting thoughts that are different than what I've heard. I don't know enough about hemp plastics to speak on it, but I'm so fascinated in it. It's
the problem that we've seen is that there's no conventional recycler that will take the current hemp plastic that's being made, that's out there, or at least, like, I think it's Cerna who is pushing that currently. So the problem is you can get a hemp plastic tube. The problem is you can't recycle it. No recycling place will take it. So there's a whole problem of the supply chain still, that these products are created, but they haven't figured out how to break it down.
Right.
Well, if hemp plastic is biodegradable, you don't have to recycle it. You can, put it in compost piles.
These are not compostable, though.
Right.
So that then answers the question.
And the thing that makes it compostable, truly compostable, is you know, the way that it's stuck together, you know, what is emulsifying that together, which is polymers, and the half-life of these polymers, you know, just because you can't see it with a naked eye doesn't mean that it's not just lying there in the soil and what they call biodegradable, which definitely, you know, severely changes the microbiology in the soil if you're having residual polymers.
Sure.
Yeah, we're pretty messed up. We start using our heads to start trying to fix problems and create new problems, and whew.
I mean, the intention was good. However, it's still not done. We still have to.
What do they say
work
about
with them?
What do they say about the road to hell?
Good intentions, my friend. Paved with.
Yes, yes, yes. Wow.
I know that Sana Packaging, SANA, I'm out of Colorado, is making different biodegradable plastics and hemp plastics, and they're a really heady, good packaging company, and packaging is a really important issue to talk about. And even with hemp cultivation, I mean, do we need, and in New York, I know it's like this, there's two classifications for hemp. There's cannabinoid hemp and there's industrial hemp. And if you live in Oregon, you might think industrial hemp is the enemy, you know, and you can't have male and female plants around. But when you're talking about a food source, or you're talking about plastics instead of, you know, polymers, and maybe there's polymers in the hemp plastic, I don't know, where's Mark? But yeah, we are needing to move forward with intelligent agriculture decisions, and having industrial hemp growing on earth is extremely important for fibers. I mean, we're wearing cotton, and cotton is still slave labor is being used to produce cotton all over the place. And if we had hemp, more hemp textiles, we would know where it came from, and the supply chain of where it came from. So it's all part of that same.
I don't think anybody's producing hemp fiber in either Canada or America.
Yeah, exactly. And I wish that you know, we could somehow change.
They want to chase the money and grow CBD instead.
Hemp Taylor.
Canada has such a wonderful landscape for, you know, big, wide open prairies that are, you know, growing canola or growing corn or growing, you know, alfalfa. It would be really amazing to see a lot of textile hemp going on in Canada. It's such a perfect environment.
It's all about the machinery.
Well, it's also oh, go ahead, Mike.
No, this is Colin. I was just saying that there's a couple mills in New York State that are very interested in the material itself. I think for them, it's about, is there a market for them? And how do they learn to work within that market? And that's what I know from talking to them. But you know, I would love to see more fabrics and things like that. And Marcus, you had mentioned Hemp Taylor, that was Hoodlum, and I wear their jackets all the time. And you know, it's not 100% hemp, but it's a very nice brand that's been around for a while, that's been really embracing hemp and the materials that are coming from it.
Is processing and the factories that you have to build for processing, spinning, and weaving are multi-million-dollar factories. I mean, it's not cheap. And you've got to have it within, say, 50 miles of where it's being grown. You can't be trucking the hemp all over the universe to make a profit.
Well, I know Hemp Taylor is working on a project in the U.S. to produce fibers, grow them in the U.S. and produce fibers and you know, make products for sale. That's one of the things that they're trying to do in 2020.
Yeah, ultimately, when you look at the evolution and deployment of hemp in North America, a lot of Europe as well as Asia didn't ban hemp as heavily as North America did during Prohibition. So many of the European clothing designers continued to have access to hemp in different forms of canvas or hemp silk or silk blends. Now that hemp has slowly been regulated here in North America, we're starting to see a lot of brands focusing on CBD, but there are some brands working on either food or fiber or plastic products. The issue is like mentioned, you know, you need to have, you know, your supply relatively close, you know, within 200 to 300 kilometers, and enough acreage being cultivated in order to, process and run that facility, that lumber mill, that fiber plant, decorticating line, or even seed line for seed oil processing, and operate that plant for 300 to 320 days a year in order to, keep.
I've been growing hemp for decades, and I don't know of anybody who processes hemp, any factory, a primary processor that processes hemp that's 300 or 200 kilometers away. Just isn't done. Nowhere.
No, it all has to be within 50 kilometers, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, I'm back. Okay, where do we begin? Oh my gosh.
Plastics, polymers, hemp.
You covered a lot of ground. Yeah, I don't know. I think the Russians hacked my computer and crashed it. They didn't want me telling the truth. Let's see here. So, yeah, hemp plastic. So, the people out selling hemp plastic right now are hemp is a source of cellulose, but so is switchgrass and so is trees. So, it has to be economical. If it's not economical, it's difficult to convince people to put capital investment into a business that's not going to make money. So it has to be able to make money. And Sam hit the nail on the head. In fact, I'll go back to something that Sam had just said, which is, as long as we have cheap oil and cheap petrochemical sources, we will continue to create and make and use single-use plastic. The other thing that cheap oil unfortunately handicaps is the cost of all alternative energy, whether it's windmills, dams, wave catchers, whatever you're using to generate energy. Ultimately, the cost of that alternative energy is pegged to the price of fossil fuels because of the infrastructure that currently exists today. And that's, Walmart, Amazon, the industrial manufacturing base, which uses a lot of petrochemical fuel because that's the cheapest form of fuel on the planet. The notion that we can somehow turn hemp into fuel is really not based in reality at all, because it actually consumes more fuel to convert hemp into ethanol than it creates. So it's a negative. It actually uses more petrochemicals. And the only reason why they can pull that stunt off down in Brazil and places that are growing sugar cane is because they have a lot of cane juice, which is enriched with sugar, which all you do is you throw yeast in there, and then the yeast makes the sugar poop out ethanol. And yeah, you could put ethanol in as a liquid fuel down in places where there already is investment made into an infrastructure to grow sugar cane on a shit ton fucking scale, right? And so that's why ethanol can make a solution down there. But turning hemp into ethanol, and I always see all these memes about all the things that hemp can do, and turning it into a liquid biofuel is absolutely crazy and nuts. And you can get the seed oil. Seed oils can be burned, but it has such a more higher value as a nutritional product and what you can do with seed oils, as opposed to the lowest value of something that you just put into an internal combustion engine or some generator to burn just for its fuel value. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous. In fact, the analysis has already been done on biofuels, and this is why you don't see cellulosic ethanol being produced today, is that if you take the same amount of cellulose, and rather than, cellulose, think of cellulose as it's high molecular weight glucose. It's a glucose molecule, which is a sugar, which it's a many different copies. So it's these high, long chains. And so think of that as stored sunlight, right? So it took a lot of energy by the plant through photosynthesis to convert those photons into this long molecule. So the wonderful thing about cellulose and cellulose derived from hemp is it's amazingly strong. You know, depending on how you measure its strength, it could be as strong as super high strength fibers like Kevlar. So it makes sense to use the hemp, not to digest it down to a sugar to feed to a yeast to poop it over into ethanol. There's a tremendous capacity that exists today in the world for grain-derived ethanol. We don't need ethanol from hemp. That's stupid and it doesn't make sense. And because you can't make money doing it, there'll never be capital investment into it. But what there will be capital investment into is where you could use the strength of the hemp fibers to reinforce composite materials. And I think that that's sort of like where hemp plastic is going. If you Google hemp plastic and you go to that site, what you'll see is that they're taking regular plastics like polycarbonate. That's what my computer's made out of. I think that's what my glass frame is made out of, polycarbonate plastic. It's what CD-ROMs are made out of. Polypropylene, polyethylene. These are all petrochemical derived polymers. And what they're doing is they're taking a petrochemical derived polymer that costs about 25 cents to 75 cents a pound. They're adding hemp fiber, right, in terms of either hurd or actually elongated fibers or oriented fibers, right, to get the inherent strength that those fibers give to the material. So now you can use, say, rather a 2-inch piece of plastic in that support versus a 5-inch piece of plastic. So you're using less plastic because you're using the strength of the hemp fibers to reinforce the plastic. But the problem is that they're trying to sell that plastic in competition with the 20-cent a pound plastic at like $2 or $5 a pound. So who's going to buy an incumbent at $2 or $5 a pound? It still has petrochemical derived plastic in it, right? But it has hemp in it, which I guess is cool, right? Because and they're lightweighting it. So again, the world will use less plastic, but basically what they're competing with is one of the ingredients that's in their product, right? And so there's other fibers that you could use. Jute is used quite a bit. There's a lot of other fibers that can be used other than hemp. This is what I've said on Hash Church a few times, and thanks for bringing it up, because again, it's just a reoccurring theme, and I don't think that things have changed a whole lot. What's really going to change, I think, in hemp is not necessarily going to be the CBD aspect. I think it's going to be the fact that we have to feed more people on less arable, farmable land in the future. And so if you have to raise protein per acre to feed livestock, right now, soybean delivers somewhere between 360 to 380 pounds of soluble protein per acre. With hemp, they believe the estimates are somewhere north of 1,000 pounds an acre. So when it comes to how do you use an acre of land to most efficiently raise a plant that produces protein that humans need and animals need in their diet, it will be hemp hands down as the winner. But now you're taking on the likes of Syngenta and Monsanto and DuPont and Cargill and Bunge and Archer's Daniel Midland. You're taking on the large corporate ag machine that exists and that have put genetically modified crops into our diet and into commerce. So yeah, it's
also, Mark, the truth of it is that hemp will not give you that much protein per acre. I mean, most varieties.
Actually, they don't really know. I can tell you because I was out on hemp fields this past year. Hemp produces a shit ton of fucking seeds, man. I mean, holy shit. We had a couple areas go out to seed, Sam, And it is
Yeah, but
unbelievable.
I've been growing hemp for seed for years and years and years.
Yeah.
And to get a ton per acre is tough, you know?
Well,
the
I think
so. Variety right now in the world is Spinola. That's a variety I developed.
Okay.
And
so
that'll give you 2 tons.
And that what's going to happen is that food is going to be the main driver for hemp to overtake soybean. And at that point, there will need to be infrastructure to process all of this available hemp fiber, which is a byproduct. And as you know, Marcus, hemp oil creates a heart-healthy oil that should be more prevalent in humans' diets. I think that that's going to be the ultimate driver that's going to create all this hemp biomass that you're going to start seeing, you know, paper products, cardboard, craft paper. Craft paper is just think of like brown paper bag or brown cardboard. That's called craft paper, which is nothing more than just ground up trees. Newsprint, you know, what newspaper is printed on is nothing more than just ground up trees. So, you know, they're taking basically the waste off of the sawmill floor after they've gone through and lumbered as much as they possibly can out of the trees, bring it across the street to the paper mill and use the old craft process, which requires sulfur. That's why it always smells like rotten eggs in and around the paper mill, which is right next to the lumber mill. So maybe in the future, what you'll see is you'll see a hemp farm, and then next to the hemp farm, because they're processing oil and crushing seeds and making that beautiful oil that Marcus has showed pictures of, and ultimately next door will be a hemp fiber processing plant that'll press that shit into boards and cardboard and paper and fiber and all the other stuff. Is that going to replace plastic? No, unfortunately, you can't make moldable plastics like polyethylene and polypropylene, which are used and processed. They usually come in these huge barrels, and they're just these small little beads, and they melt. And in the melt, they can be processed and formed into the screen of your laptop or the case of your cell phone. You can't do that with cellulose-based polymers. When you heat up cellulose-based polymers, they degrade into melt. And so the cellulose-based polymers like cellophane, which is just xanthated cellulose just to make it soluble, have to be solvent-based and cast in films, and they don't have an engineering modulus, so they can't be used like more thermoset polymers, which, you know, again, flow into melt, set up in the melt, make high molecular weight, strong plastic components for things like marine, you know, aeronautical and transportation. We can't rid ourselves from plastic, I don't think. I think plastic's going to be around. We just got to try to get away from single-use plastic.
And Mark, is cellulose biodegradable? It is.
Yeah,
isn't it?
If cellulose wasn't biodegradable, we would be choking in the forest.
So cellophane could be used for a lot of things that clear plastic is used for.
Cellophane, is used to wrap candy bars, and I mean, cellophane was actually, I think it wasn't invented in DuPont. I think the Germans invented it, but DuPont stole it, I think. And they, you know, again, that was a big advance to be able to keep bread fresh. You know, they used to say, oh, that's greater than sliced bread. I think that came back from the fact that you could make sliced bread, put it in a cellophane wrapped package, and it could actually maintain its freshness. That was a real advance many years ago, better than sliced bread.
But hey, so can we shift a little bit into this THCP paper? What do you guys think?
Oh man,
that's a great topic. I was gonna,
It's not every day that they invent or discover a new cannabinoid, right? How cool is that? You had to almost predict it, right? Because the smaller homologs were known, right? Like THCV was known. You know, this is just, you know, so it's got a couple extra carbons on the on the alkyl tail of the molecule. And if you know about the biosynthetic pathway, the way that's put together through the polyketide synthase, you'll know that you could change the substrate on which that enzyme acts on, and it just extends the Tinker Toys just 2 more carbon atoms. So yeah, I mean, I think it's really cool that they found it, and then they came up with a synthesis of it too, which is, Italians are noted for their synthetic work, so it's beautiful to see a nice piece of synthesis come out on how to make the molecule so they can identify it. And then they showed a little bit of data in mice, right? I got the paper open on my desktop, and I'm not going to look at it. I think,
can you send the link so I can send it into the
Marcus, here, let me
or send it into the YouTube chat room, either or.
Oh, you know what? When my computer crashed, I lost it. Hold on, I'll just take a second.
No problem.
But
and has any human being taken THCP yet? Have you heard of any human being? I don't mean in tiny amounts like might be found in a plant. I mean significant, more like 90% or 100% pure. Like,
well, I have no earthly idea. I mean, I just read about the molecule for the first time, I think a week ago today on my birthday. I think I found out about this. I was just like, just read about it, so I have no fucking clue. But those Italians, who knows what the fuck they're up to, right? In fact, I think from what I remember from reading, I think on a thread on a Facebook chat, someone told me that this was actually owned by the Italian army,
See, that's what I've been saying all along. I think that governments and high-powered people have known about crazy cannabinoids in cannabis for years, and that's part of why they squashed it, because it can't be GMO'd, and then there's these things that keep people alive forever and things in there.
It certainly can be GMO'd. You're wrong.
Well, anyway, it also breaks rules, so we'll see what happens when you GMO it.
I want to hear what happens when a human being tries it. I remember everybody's told you pure THC is the ultimate whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I smoked pure THC 20 years ago, and it wasn't as strong as 90% resin head hash from skunk, because the skunk had the terpenes, and that potentiated the pure THC even stronger than pure THC.
So this is one curiosity that I think a lot of people are interested in this particular molecule, because they did some docking. We all know that the active site of CB1 is now known, right? There's a crystal structure of it, right? And the promise of having a crystal structure of your receptor is, think of it as like the photographic negative for what you want the molecule to look like, right? Key to fit in the lock, right? So if you know what the receptor looks like, well, shit, you should be able to design the perfect lock. That's called rational drug design. Well, rational drug design doesn't always work as well as it should. However, it's awful good at making predictions around potency and relative potency. And the molecular mechanic calculations come out that this thing has 30x times the binding energy by extending the alkyl chain by 2 carbons, which is a fascinating notion, because the question is how long does that hydrophobic channel in the active site of the enzyme is? I mean, maybe you could extend it a little bit more, maybe every time you extend it, or maybe there's a sweet spot, and after you extend it too much, it won't fit in there anymore. Or maybe, like a lot of alkyl chains, they end up actually not sort of wagging out in a straight fashion like you would draw it on the molecular structure, but what they end up actually doing is curling back on the molecule itself and creating some kind of 3-dimensional, topography on the molecule that just gives a better fit into the receptor site. So I'll finish by just saying the molecular mechanics predict that there's going to be a 30x increase in binding. Now, again, that's just a computer model and docking this thing on the computer. This is what the computer says. Ultimately, how potent it is, I think, needs to be fleshed out in actual receptor
example, Mark, if you take pure THC and you smoke it, then it delivers THC to the bloodstream in the brain. If you eat it, it delivers 11-hydroxy to the brain and the bloodstream. So after a pass through the liver. Now, I'm wondering the same thing about this THCP. I mean, if you eat it and you smoke it, are there different potencies, different effects? Because 11-hydroxy and THC don't have identical effects.
No, I think part of the 11-hydroxy issue is that when you increase the polarity of the molecule, it decreases its ability to cross the blood-brain barrier. Blood-brain barrier is a very, very hydrophobic kind of passage. And certainly changing the polarity of the molecule, even changing from THCA to THC, even though there's a lot of arguing and speculation on this in the literature, a lot of belief is that change in and of itself is affecting its promiscuity across the blood-brain barrier. Not everything that's in the blood makes it into the brain and vice versa. So there has to be some compartmentalization and understanding on what types of properties of molecules make that happen. I think I'd mentioned this last year. We're working with a group in Minnesota that has a liposomal delivery to sneak things across the blood-brain barrier. And wouldn't it be great to find out that, again, like you say, Sam, by the time it gets in there, it's the 11-hydroxy, and it's a whole lot less because it doesn't cross as readily as THC, but it also has, I think, a higher affinity for CB1 receptor in and of itself. I mean, that's, I think, what most interests me is that if you can increase this alkyl chain, maybe, again, the decrease in the alkyl chain is one of the reasons why you see differential activity with THCV. So the longer that alkyl chain comes, the more potent it is. And maybe, again, that's something that could be potentiated by terpenes or something maybe that's not. But I'd like to think, and I don't know, I have no data to support this at all, but this is just one of those ghost cannabinoids that has been in cannabis forever. We're just discovering it now, right?
No, for example, CBD has a couple like this. So does THC has a few other ones besides THC.
Right, they all would. So just like they all have like a C3 analog, like the Varins, they all have the
Mark's cutting out.
Yeah,
Russians.
You keep freezing, Mark.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's no reason to believe that if the C9 is there and the C7 is there, that the C11 and the C13, all these different alkyl chains might be there because, again, it may just be the promiscuity of the polyketide synthase that's in that particular strain that determines what of those minor metabolites are made. Or minor
what I find really interesting is it's found in the plant. So that's, I figure I can breed one that's 90% THCP.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's always been there. We just never knew it.
Yeah, and
more to come.
CDP. There's CDP, CBDP.
Right, and then the CBG analog, the CBC analog.
Right, exactly.
There's no reason to believe that's unique to the C5 cannabinoid. So, yeah, it's really cool. I love the fact that they synthesized it too, right? Isn't that just so great? Shows you how easy these molecules are to make. Plant does a really great job in synthesizing them, but that they're probably going to put that, try to express that the genes that code for that enzyme in yeast and try to make that in bacteria and algae and other things through heterologous expression. That turns out to be another real exciting field in cannabinoids today, is, you know, the ability to make them outside of the plant.
Yeah, you put them in tomatoes, you put them in bananas, you put them in pineapples. That way you can have pineapple kush.
All you got to do is go to Jamaica for the pineapple kush, Sam.
Yalma.
The pineapple kush.
So in terms of breeding, you know, Sam, in all your years, you know, since this is a new cannabinoid, do you believe that, you know, a lot will be revealed in terms of isolating this and you know, genetic selection? And is this something you think that we will be able to you know, exploit in the same ways we've been able to?
You can breed for it, but right now the levels are extremely, extremely, extremely minute. So
right.
what you need to do is get a population that has a significant amount, whether that's 0.5 or, you know, just half of 1% even, and then by selfing and breeding it, you can, you know, quickly get it up to more like above 10%.
And then from there, you take it into a program and then select.
Yeah, and then you can hybridize it with any variety you want to
Sure.
increase the THCP. But until people take it, like I said, everybody thought pure THC was a cat's meow. Well, it's only half as strong as 50% THC in resin with the right terpenes. So
what about THCP with the right terpenes?
Well,
right.
that's one other thing. That's why I'm asking. Anybody know any human beings that have taken significant amounts of this stuff?
No, I don't. That I do not. Yeah.
Well, wait a second. We don't know if we have or not.
That's true.
This was a discovery. So these people have found it in these varieties of cannabis. It may be in all the varieties of cannabis that we've ever smoked. We just don't know.
That might be true, but that also might be in 0.001% amount.
Yeah. It's part of that minor cannabinoid profile, right?
But is there a standard for people to see it?
It's the third cello and the fifth violin, and it's barely visible.
If it was there in significant amounts, it would have been discovered earlier.
Right.
But I don't, you know, like, hey, the underdog could pull through too. You never know what. I always said it, that things that we might not recognize or have discovered that are present in the smallest amounts may have very profound effects on these entourage effects.
What they're doing is they're finding the peaks when they analyze this, either with high pressure liquid chromatography or maybe even NMR, whatever the fuck.
No, mass spec, man.
Mass spec
nails it, right? It tells you that molecular weight is that molecular weight. And it didn't take them long to figure it out. And then what they did is they went back and synthesized the decarboxylated material.
I understand exactly. And if you look at it, the peak that they found was so fucking minute. They've already identified all the bigger peaks. Now they're finding the really minute ones.
Yeah, the concentrations that they reported, if I remember correctly off the top of my head, was about 60 milligrams per gram. So it's very, very minute. I think the CBD one was like maybe about half that, like 30 milligrams per gram. So yes, very, very minute amount. But I think I think what this demonstrates is the promiscuity of the polyketide synthase, which puts together that building block in the cannabinoid biosynthesis.
Yeah, and it used to be exactly the same with all the minor cannabinoids.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
They were not in large
9,
amounts.
10, 11.
Now
this is what we call in science a football team paper, because you look at how many authors. 12 authors. Holy shit. I wish I had 11 scientists in my lab, all with Italian last name, running around doing this kind of work. Holy shit balls. Football team size paper here. This is
not only that, but I don't
effort.
really recognize the Italians. I mean,
This
I know a lot of Italian. Huh?
This is significant. I mean, again, this is a very significant finding and certainly a wonderful thing to see in the literature. Now the question is like when we've characterized our extracts before and we could characterize, say, 95 or 96%, is the remaining 2% molecules like this that, again, now we could really try to quantify everything that we're extracting out of the plant. There's going to be several more discoveries like this, I think, that are going to help understand what those minor third and fourth cellos in the orchestra are.
Well, thanks. I'm more than a little bit curious.
Thanks for sharing your screen, Mike. Nice to be able to
cool
check
stuff.
that out. Yeah.
I love that the plant is offering this chemistry to us, and I love that the scientists, including folks on the panel today, are trying to understand what this plant is doing. And I loved Mark's suggestion. We might have been consuming this cannabinoid all along. It's why I think the whole plant thing is so important. And meantime, Happy New Year, everyone. And sorry my camera's not working, but yeah, this is a really great church this morning. Among other things, the conversation about Hawaii and how to restore soil on islands. It would apply to urban landscapes and places where mining activity has happened and whatnot. You can use the material you got, and really a lot. I've been fascinated lately by reading up on what's called Korean natural farming, and kind of stunned at how much of it I'm already doing in my practices here. And the Dim Pure family really defined beautifully a lot of what's going on there. I really do think that it's in the genetics of the plant as well as in the practices of how we share with people how to work with this plant. Everything from in the garden to when you're offering it to an end user for its therapeutic effects. The whole plant is the real story. And that's all I got at the moment. I just love the church. Thank you, all of you, for coming. It's so beautiful to see you. And like I said, I'm going to figure out, I might have to replace my computer to get this camera issue fixed. But much love and Happy New Year. And I think 2020, we're going to be able to see better. Ciao.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Wade. I was hoping we'd hear from you at one point in time. We've had some long dominated conversations with specific people, which have been absolutely incredible and amazing. But love to hear from some of you guys that haven't said anything. We haven't heard from Dee. We haven't heard from Sabo. Haven't heard from.
Hard to interrupt such good knowledge. I like taking it in.
It's true.
Yeah, I've been drinking deep as well, Marcus. This is so beautiful. Thank you for making this happen this morning.
Yeah, well, a new year, a new energy available. So the last year was very busy for me, and I sort of was unable to focus on really making videos, on really posting on YouTube, and a couple of key things. YouTube sort of, I think won't close my channel, but they definitely made some changes to my channel on their end, where I wasn't even sure if I was even going to be able to still live stream. So I'm glad that we're able to do that. That's kind of a blessing, and it's always good to be able to send out a link and actually get some of you to say, yeah, I'll come in, because that's the key, right? If I show up by myself, it's not a show. So
we're gonna show up, dude.
It's good. It's very good.
We love to talk about cannabis, hash, everything. 2020.
Yes. Well, everybody in chat too, right? The chat is
exploding.
It takes on a life of its own, right? And it polices itself, right? When someone gets out of line, you know.
Nice to have a
Mama
nice
comes in and whacks them.
Just a bunch of peaceful cannabinoids.
Nice universal bong rep with everybody in the chat, online, in the video, all of it. It's always nice to do that on a Sunday morning.
All right.
I was actually reliving that bong rip that Santa Claus came and had with us that one time there, Mark.
That was awesome.
That was pretty awesome. Yeah.
That was pretty awesome.
That's why I had to basically make my channel like safe from children right there.
Yeah, I had to do YouTube. Really hammered on me too. I wasn't able to do anything for months. Like you couldn't upload. You can only comment on stuff. So people are always asking, you can't upload videos. So a lot of people have been getting slapped with all these new rules, and I even do a video saying that, hey, if you're under 19, please don't be on my channel. I think they're going to really come after us in Canada with the new Cannabis Act. I think it's going to be a problem.
Oh, it's a setting, John. It's a setting. You don't have to say that you can't have people under 19. There's an adult setting in YouTube.
I do that.
This channel is for this is not for children. And then the algorithm won't allow it to get into zones where, maybe people that are younger are going to be. I don't think we need to be personally
All you have to
protected.
do is claim that it's Russian fake news from Putin, and they'll let you play it.
That's about it. Well, here's that universal bong rep that D420K said. I hope everyone's ready.
Mother lovers.
So a few interesting things in the processing world are happening. There seems to be a lot of interest in this whole CRC business, and a lot of people have reached out to me asking about it. Is it color remediation chromatography? I think that's what the acronym stands for.
Mm-hmm.
But if you all know who Murphy Murray is, she's working with Sano Gardens and those folks in Colorado. I just saw Sam at the fish show not too long ago, so it was good to see those guys. But
how about Mike? Mike from High Dolph, you see him too?
Yes, I saw Mike at the BizCon, but I did not see Mike at the fish shows. I don't know.
Shout out to Mike.
Yeah,
shout out to Mike for sure. Big shout out to Mike, man.
Our mutual friend Mike Bishop.
Yeah,
Mike's
Bishop's
a really
man.
good friend of mine. He's kind of like the High-Off sales guy from out west, right? He's originally from Delaware, not too far from here. But I guess this CRC thing is really getting a lot of attention because a lot of people have different techniques and different methods and different packing materials, and it's just really interesting to see people using good chromatography techniques to, there's the old saying, which is you can't make good oil from bad herb, and typically vice versa, right? I mean, you like to think that if you have really good herb, if your extraction method is really good. But I guess this was originally brought up not just for color remediation. I think it was really brought up for remediating hot material or pesticide material. But it's really cool to see that, again, you're seeing a lot of high quality product out there, and I don't think it gives growers the license to spray whatever they want just because you can clean it up later in a chromatography step. But chromatography is certainly a sort of a trend, and I see a lot of instrument manufacturers now making columns and hardware to do that kind of work. The other trend I saw at BizCon is that, we were talking about this earlier about doing extraction and the dark oil that Etienne showed us, which typically means you've extracted pigments and other crap, or somewhere along the line things turn dark due to oxidation. Mm-hmm. Well, certainly you can do, and I've seen this where you can do a low temperature extraction with ethanol and actually make a product that's so pure that it'll shatter up just like a butane extract would. So you can get a low selective alcohol pull that makes a really golden colored extract that's not dark at all. and it's dabbable and it tastes really good. I know that Chris Witkowski at the folks at Move have been using ethanol extract, and they're crushing it. They're doing really well in the markets they're serving. But a big trend that I see now is that people are moving away from cryogenic extraction of ethanol and just doing an extraction at room temperature and then processing the room temperature extract to remove what you're extracting out at room temperature that you don't want. So like the fats, waxes, lipids, any sugars or any other water solubles that are coming out, you could remove by, again, either chromatography, or one of the new techniques is something called lenticular filtration. Lenticular filtration is what it's called. It's similar to the filtration apparatus. If anyone's ever looked inside like a swimming pool filter, you know, you basically have all of these discs that have filter material in it, and basically the material, the stuff flows from inside these radial discs and flows out through the filtration process. And again, it was really news to me that you can basically do a room temperature extraction with ethanol and the right processing of that ethanol such that you didn't need to winterize the extract, because winterization is just really ugly and messy and sloppy, and it's real nice to be able to have a selective extract that you don't have to winterize. So just two sort of trends that I see happening in extraction. You know, there's still a lot of work going on in scaling up of hemp operations at BizCon this year. Yeah, it was kind of like, you know, the biggest, shiniest stainless steel tank farms you could wheel into that room to try to get, you know, people who are spending lots of money to put large hemp processing facilities. Tends to be something that's happening. And so you would think, again, with the increase in the amount of hemp processing infrastructure, what's now happened, you know, be careful what you wish for, is the price of isolate has crashed.
And Mark, yeah. What do you feel
hold
about
on, let me finish this thought before it dies of loneliness. So, so a lot of people who invested in growing hemp in 2019 with the notion that they were going to be able to convert and get, like, you know, anywhere between $5,000 to maybe $10,000 a kilo for their isolate are really bumming, because right now that you know, exchange price of isolate is just a little north of $2,000 a kilo. So the CBD market has crashed, and what seems to really be taking off are the other cannabinoids like CBG and CBN. So those are a couple trends that are happening here in the States. CBN prices are through the roof, and you see more and more CBG stuff coming online. And I see a couple growers over in Italy, a Swiss guy in the north of Italy who's got a CBG variety that shows somewhere about 14 to 15% CBG based on dried weight. So just a couple trends, just wanted to share with everyone. Go ahead, Sam.
What do you think about remediation, where they're cleaning up pesticide sprayed herb? What do you think of that? Because I don't approve at all.
Yeah, I don't approve. I don't think, you know, if grown right, you know, cannabis doesn't need pesticides, and I hate to I hate to enable that by coming up with ways of cleaning up tainted oil. But I don't want my well, I was going to say, I don't want my kids. I don't want my friends' kids dying of a vape pen that's got, you know, pesticide contamination in an oil from a black market cart that they bought at a Dead and Company show. You know,
I mean,
I feel really bad. I feel really bad for the folks who feel that the last resort they have is pesticides. It shows that they failed, but when they've invested so much of their livelihood and they're going to financially be in ruin if they don't, they're up against the wall. And that's just a tough situation to be in, a situation created only by the ridiculousness of the black market and prohibition.
It's one thing if they're cleaning up mold and fungus. I mean, that happens to the best people who are serious growers. But when they're cleaning up pesticides and fungicides, I don't know, it just gives me the creepy crawlies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
much easier to grow it without those things in it.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's just not needed.
I think that the issue that exists is what happens when hot oil is discovered, right? Does that does that create, again, a paper trail back to the person who applied the pesticides, such that some regulatory authority could come and shut that individual down, or cite that individual and fine them, such that if it happens again, then they lose their license? I mean, certainly, again, this is something that, another significant thing that's happened since our last Hash Church is the EPA has now allowed just a handful of agrochemical treatments. They're not chemicals themselves. They're all biological treatments, which should make Josh and Kelly happy. They're all biologicals, right? So they're all sort of part of, I guess, what you'd call the bio IPM strategy of using bugs to treat bugs. But I guess the thing that doesn't sit very well, again, is that there are no real safety studies that show that when you apply those materials to cannabinoids, that the cannabis is safe for consumption. So we go back to, is it really appropriate to apply crop protection products like fungicides, even if they're biologically sourced and biologically derived? Is it really useful for cannabis production? And I don't have the answer to that.
I think that there's not enough known really about the bacterium and the different types of foliars that they're making and what kind of effects it's going to have on the soil and also the aquatic life, which, a lot of that doesn't go. Cornell has a whole lot of studies on a lot of different products and super intelligent there. But, we're finding.
But the one encouraging thing, if I could just interrupt for a second, Kelly, would be that with the EPA taking the step in this direction, if I'm a company that wants to make a product like that, now there's a regulatory pathway to develop that study. And I could actually get a return on my investment if I do the studies to show that this biological, which is part of our natural environment, could be used at this use rate to control this particular type of pathogen that attacks cannabis and taints cannabis with microbiological infection. This product can be used. Now companies don't have to be in the dark about doing the safety and efficacy studies to support a product like that. And it's no longer the EPA is going to categorically say, no, cannabis is Schedule 1, and no, we won't look at any product registrations. The EPA's mandate is to make sure that the crop protection chemicals that are used on the food supply and on chemicals of commerce that come in contact with humans, like in cosmetics, that those are safe. They don't always get it right, and the Environmental Working Group will let you know that in spades, but I can tell you it's a step in the right direction that they're looking to say, look, we need to regulate products for this industry, because if we don't, that's just a total wrong move altogether.
And in general, I would think that biologicals are probably safer than petrochemicals. But I'm making a big statement by saying that, but in general, I do find that to be true.
Yeah, I just think that it's really interesting, you know, Mark, what you said. Of course, it makes sense. Any kind of avenue that you can get more research and more study on it is better. It's just really interesting that things become, you know, put into the regulated market before we even have the opportunity for environmental studies to even look at it. So already it's screwed up. You know, you were saying, you know, do we need to go back to the farmer who tested hot on any kind of a pesticide or a fungicide test? You know, we need to go back to the FDA. We need to go back to the EPA. You know, the problem.
Are part of that.
Yeah, and also, you know, there's a lot of these different micro biology foliars that you can spray on your plants or that you can put on your soils, but we need to look at it in a more holistic view. What's it doing to what I said before is our aquatic life, and what's also happening to our pollinators.
There's a lot of, there are biological sprays.
Totally agree. Totally agree. And the way that the system is in place right now, again, the EPA is the regulatory authority that doesn't do those testing. But what they do, the testing, the responsibility for the testing and the data package is on the registrant, is on the person who wants to register the product under something called FIFRA, which is the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act. So our U.S. government says that if you want to make a product that fits in that product category, you have to register it with the EPA. And what the EPA does is it's just got a group of experts, typically academics and other folks, who look at the not just safety, which is what does this thing do to humans, what does this thing do to the environment, what does it do to non-target pests, but also does it actually fucking work, you know? And again, to do those studies takes years and millions of investment. And typically, like for an ag chemical company like my former employer, they would spend anywhere between $10 to $50 million just to get that one product over the goal line. So it's not a cheap thing to do, because you have to do toxicity in animals, and as soon as you get a bad result on tox, you're dead in the water. Now all that investment up to that point, you're dead. So it's
one thing that's happening,
something that has to be done in order to show safety. And again, because cannabis was illegal, all these companies that sell products into the space wouldn't touch this with a 10-foot pole, because they have to break the law to show. Now it's interesting with tobacco, right? Because
in such a microscopic space that, you know, we're creating cannabis in accordance with nature, and we're passing all the tests. And then when we as a community go to make edibles, you know, they'll fail the test from the cacao used, or they'll fail tests from other food streams that they're now using. So the crossover of the scrutiny that's happening with the cannabis spaces is entering into the food chain. And we've been, you know, studying about how there's like a feminization of men and happening on Earth, and through xenoestrogens, and that's through the plastics that we were talking about, and through food processing and so many different things. That is just incredibly important that we have these conversations and get to a more healthy space, because the FDA allows up to like 3,000 chemicals to be added to food without any certifications, and this is just regular food streams. So, you know, I think we need to it's an issue on our community to have to go through such scrutiny to grow, but it's also shedding light on the rest of our world, so that the consciousness that's expanding through our use of cannabis and then our business practices is now allowing us to say, wow, look at the food supply. The food supply is incredibly, challenged right now. And we have incredible scientists and microbiology friends that won't even enter the cannabis space at the moment because they're just so directed into food and food security and seed saving and stuff. So I appreciate these conversations. I appreciate everyone bringing it to the table. And it's really our mission in life, to make a healthier world. And this medicine is an incredibly powerful one. And we're bringing that consciousness to everything we're.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I was talking, but I was on mute.
Oh yeah.
I was like, what the fuck is going on right now? Why is everyone just like
quiet, right?
Okay, so what I asked Josh and Kelly and any, specifically Josh and Kelly, because I was wondering in regards to what you just said, did you guys actually watch that little documentary I sent you the link for?
I don't know if
we didn't
because we've been out of we just got electricity back last night.
Check it out when you get a chance for sure. Yeah, I know you guys were. How many days did you have no electricity for?
5.
We lost electricity at 8 o'clock on New Year's Eve and didn't get it back till yesterday.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
We had to force to quit and couldn't make any of our appointments and everything. It's just
brings the family close.
It does.
Actually, it was just Josh and I, and that's been a long time. Just him and I here on the homestead.
Because we lost our power the other night, only for the night. But in a very short period of time, my son, my other son, my daughter, our cat, our dog, the wife, myself, we were all just kind of hanging out, having a nice fire. And it was oh yeah, this is nice.
I like it. We always say here that we lose our electricity because we always have our power.
Totally. I like that.
Take that away from us.
Well, you guys should watch that documentary. You're going to really enjoy it. And it's all about growing and organics, and Paul Stamets is in it. I think the guys that put it together did a really good job. I'm going to share the link with some other people on the panel, everyone on the panel. But I want to do a show on it eventually because I think it's a really cool documentary. And shout out to the brother from Calgary who turned me on to it. Spacing his name right now, which is terrible, but he just showed me super love when I was in Calgary not too long ago for the CHTA Hemp conference that was there.
Marcus, make sure that you share it with the collective.
Well, I sent it to you guys and I said, if you want, you can share it with the collective. I didn't know the collective rules and I didn't want to be oh, maybe I'm not supposed to be promoting this documentary or something. I don't know. But I think you guys will really love it.
What it's all about.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome.
What do you do if you're a grower and the electricity goes out and
get a generator.
You're growing under lights? I mean, Jesus fucking Christ.
Seriously.
I've always had a generator because it happens. And at that time, you throw in a T5 into a 121. I've gone through some storms. I was going to wonder, you guys, 5 days, how'd you get through? If you have plants, mothers, or anything like that? What are you doing there? Do you have any kind of backup batteries or anything like that?
Few mothers going, so we're not doing any kind of high intensity flowering or anything, and we just keep the plants near the window.
There you go.
We did put a generator on for a little bit because the freezer was thawing out and stuff. So. If we
called a couple of them outside.
We just I think that near the window just works good enough for us. But that's why we're annual growers, because it takes a lot to grow here in the winter, and we do actually lose electricity quite a bit here, so it's pretty difficult. So we just do a really beautiful big annual grow, and then we use the whole winter to process. So during the winter, with the electricity off, we can still make hash and
that's the best time to make hash.
Exactly. So we've been able to make some really good dry sift in this cold weather and everything, and it gives us a chance to connect with cannabinoids,
You understand how horrible it is.
Well, I've always had a battery pack just in case, just to plug in my heating mat and my T5 to keep my babies warm, because if the light's gone out a few times. So I've just, because it's happened in the past, I've always had one.
We have gravity-fed water and wood heat, and really all the
and
food,
some alternative power as well for other small areas.
And as far as food greens and stuff, we just sprout, so we're basically in exist mode at the moment.
Awesome.
But we are getting ready to travel and spread the good word and be out at the Science of Regenerative Cannabis, and we're going to head out towards Maine and Humboldt really soon down in California. But we're also going to be out in Maine, and Mark, it'd be really cool to meet up with you out in the East Coast. I don't know if you can head up to Maine, or maybe we come see you, but it would be really valuable to us all in the regenerative cannabis movement, just to see, what you had to offer.
I was going to say gravity fed. I just started hooked up auto pots for like the first time, and like just put up like 16, and what a revolution. Like it's so nice because I can actually go away. I don't have to be there every day. I love the gravity fed. Yeah, I'm stoked. 2020.
I want to show the trailer for that little movie I was talking about. You guys can kind of keep talking until I figure it out. It's sharing the screen didn't seem to be quite as simple as I thought it would be. Here we go.
What did you say, Mark? You're going to play the Trailer Park Boys?
Yeah, I'm going to play the Trailer Park Boys. All right, I guess it's not going to be so easy. Oh yeah, maybe it will be. All right, forget about it. I'm not doing it. Everyone can go check them out. They're at earthconsciouslife.org. And the movie is called The Need to Grow. Save the soil, save the world.
Need to grow. I like that.
It's very good. It's very
Hey, is Sabo already leave, or is he still on?
I hope he's still on.
Well, he said in the chat that he was gonna get off to take his little ones for a hike.
Yeah, he's a family man. I should have given him a better opportunity this morning, but it just worked out the way it worked. And
yeah, it's a bummer. I wanted to tell him about something. So, this whole vape pen crisis, or this whole vaping crisis, has been really, blown out of proportion, and has actually done enough damage to actually move markets and change market dynamics on what's going on. And so one of the things I think a few experts have recognized, I want to point out Jeff at the workshop and Chris at True Terpenes, is that we better move on this issue fast and move responsibly. And so we're going to be starting a cannabis vaping association, and really want people like Sabo and other experts to be part of that discussion, because to me it's like the main mission is to collect and disseminate science-based information and best practices for cannabis vaporization products, because we believe that if done properly, cannabis vaping is safe. But yeah, if done properly. So that means that we really need to be responsive on setting up some type of regulatory framework on what's allowed, and maybe even come up with a list of things that shouldn't be used, like this vitamin E acetate, just for example. Or if they find MCT to be bad, and if the studies are out there and the best practices are, if you want to make a cannabis vape pen, there's other things that there's other alternatives that you can use rather than these things which we know are problematic. So again, I think it's a wonderful thing that, thought leaders in our industry are trying to get ahead of this issue and not let the, hysteria and the media kind of blow it way out of proportion. Because I know we've all seen these, honey, grab the children articles. It's crazy that they try to, again, really steer with knee-jerk reaction and clickbait to really get people, all worked up on this issue when, let's face it, a lot of people are using cannabis vape pens. Certainly the deaths and the illnesses is nowhere near that of tobacco. So cry me a fucking river if their concern is about safety when they let tobacco and the nicotine vaping thing go, which is completely a juggernaut going towards destruction anyway, because their active ingredient is toxic and ours isn't. So
hey, Doc.
I think it's just a really good move by, again, people in our industry to put this together, and people like me are going to participate, and I hope people like Sabo and other folks who are in the vape end of our industry have a real important a role to play to make sure that common sense is used, and that we have a fair level field for the evaluation of things like terpenes. Like we all know, we love terpenes. Terpenes are what drew humans to cannabis, right? But that doesn't mean that you should be, using them at the concentration that they're used at certain times. There could be very, very,
Where do you think that level is, Mark? Like, if you make a great extract from a cultivar that's close to 5% terpene content, that you're going to get a fairly high terpene percentage in that extract.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, like I remember looking originally at some of like the original, I'm going back to like 2014 when we looked at using NMR to try to identify, how clean some of these mixtures were. But I think that a lot has to do with not just the amount of what you're using. I mean, certainly like limonene is a solvent, right? There's limonene in cannabis, but the limonene that's in your orange cleaner, I mean, one of the reasons why orange cleaner works so good is because they need to add emulsifiers to keep the limonene in solution, and that basically makes a good cleaner. Those compounds, again, at high concentrations could have really detrimental effects. And I think that like people who are like buying terpenes from terpene providers like True Terpenes have to realize that, when you put, I guess, a vape pen formula together, I mean, I guess the concept of adding a terpene is that you could flavor it and all that and maybe thin it out a little bit. But, if you don't have the analytical equipment in your home or in your lab or wherever you're doing this work, I mean, you're really not doing your customers any justice, because you really don't know at what level is appropriate. And again, like Sam's always talked about, terpenes potentiate to cannabinoids. We know that's part of the entourage effect, but I think you can completely overwhelm a concentrate or an extract or a vape pen fluid with way too much terpenes. Or, is one drop on a diamond, is that too much? Is that not enough? I mean, who knows? I can't.
Do you find a difference between cannabis-based terpenes and food-based terpenes?
Well, okay, so that was a discussion we had many years ago. So terpenes are molecules. They have no memory from which
they sprang.
They came from. So limonene derived from, well, actually, that's not entirely true, because like there's two different isomers of pinene. There's a right-handed and a left-handed version. And one is more predominant in pine species in North America, and the other one is more predominant in Europe, and they don't fully understand why. So that's an example where, yeah, it depends which biological source it comes from.
Well, I have something to chime in on this one, in the sense that the real difference is that cannabis-derived terpenes are always profiles, and plant and fruit terpenes are always like single molecule terpenes.
Well,
no,
really. No. They're all everything's a profile. Why would an orange peel just make one terpene? There's probably like
Well, I know when Horatio was ordering pure terpenes and he was getting his D-limonene, that it was like eventually he figured out there was a small, tiny percentage of citrus oils that he figured out how to remove, which we did a video on, which totally freaked me out. Because when he first showed me that oil, I was like, it smells like oranges. He's like, no, it's fine. And then months later, he was like, well, I actually figured this out. And I went and filmed it, and he showed that like, he took a clear D-limonene and pulled the orangest shit out of it you could ever imagine. And it was the citrus oils from 5 gallons of this shit that he like had a liter of or something. But it freaked me out in the sense that I was like, well, what the fuck is in those citrus oils?
So there's another sesquiterpene called valencine that's, similar to Valencia oranges, and it's got a real, much more fruitier orange essence than limonene. Limonene to me smells like orange cleaner, but valencine smells like somebody just twisted an orange peel under your nose. It's got that almost bitterness of orange that comes through in the orange peel or the orange zest. But Marcus, you hit it on the head, which is that any terpene profile like in cannabis, and if you look at the amount of terpenes in cannabis, if you were to take like the ideal extract is you want the terpenes and the cannabinoids and very little else. And that's why we love live resin, because you can almost get there. In fact, again, I got to go back and look at some of our old data, because now that I know that THCP is in there or could be in there, that can take some. We had live resin that was analyzing for anywhere between 90 to 93% cannabinoids, and the rest were almost terpenes, almost all the way up to 100%. So we were almost able to make the perfect extract from cannabis, which was just terpenes and cannabinoids and very little else. Whatever else was in there was somewhere like about 2 or 3%. Maybe these cannabinoids that these Italians discovered, maybe that was the missing jigsaw pieces. We just found them underneath the couch. It's cool to think about. It really is, because I think that the crazy thing is that if you're isolating cannabinoids, there's no reason why those would be partitioned out, right? Because you're doing a very nonpolar extraction. Those are going to come along for the ride. So I got to go back and look at a bunch of data and see if those other Italian discovered cannabinoids are in there. They might be in there, right?
There's all kinds of printed evidence where you should be able to find that peak as an unidentified peak.
Right, Sam. I mean, who's going to go back and do? I wonder if these guys have already done. And obviously, I see something. I want to hydrogenate it. I got to get that thing. We got to see what we can do there, because there's a whole new bunch of structures that we could make. That have never been made before.
I would be very tempted to breed a THCP dominant variety. I don't think it'd be that hard.
Yeah, here's what I think. Here's what I think these guys have already figured out, because it's the Italian army. I think they've already figured out that they got to identify the promiscuity of that enzyme to work on those higher homologs, figure out an experimental mutant, put that into E. coli, and overexpress it through heterologous expression, and use that way to make this thing.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
No, that's one way to do it. That's one way to do it.
It is.
It's the wrong way to do it.
I would breed it in cannabis variety.
It's like the tools of modern biology exist, and there's scientists who are in the lab working on this very thing right now as we're talking about it. I'll bet you $1 to a donut, right?
And meantime, the plant is doing it as we speak.
I know. The plant's been doing it for years. We just didn't know about it.
Very true. Very true. I don't know exactly what you said, but at E. coli, I started to get frightened.
Well, they could use E. coli. They could use yeast. They could use several other vehicles to accomplish the same thing, Mark. But so far, it's not cheaper to do it that way than to grow it in the plant.
Well, but just it's isolated, like you said, Sam, in so little quantity. Now it's a race between trying to breed to overexpress
but when somebody clever like me gets a hold of a variety that's got just 0.01% THCP, within a couple of years, I'll have it up to 5 or 10.
Yeah, see, I think those guys like John Page and those guys and Chimera, those guys will identify the genes that code for the mutant for that, and they'll figure that shit out and patent that shit up, man. They should do that.
That's true, but you gotta remember,
good for them.
It was
that's cutting edge science, folks. I mean, this is this is where plant biotechnology exists today. It's like I see no reason with them using it.
You're right. We're making those steps, but it was us using classical breeding that explained the inheritance of the cannabinoids in cannabis.
So Sam, with that said, how many generations do you think it would take to bring, let's say 0.1% to 10 or 14, if that?
It might take 4 or 5 generations plus creating polyhybrids from several related families.
Are you basing that on THCV? Was that from the THCV story?
Yeah, I mean, THCV, the varieties that I started with, I had 4 different families that I used. South African, Thai, Afghan, and what I did was I selfed them each for 3 or 4 generations, and then crossed the inbred families that were starting to lose their vigor, starting to lose resistance. Their yield was way down. But then when I crossed them and made hybrids out of them, it restored all the F1 vigor, and it worked really, really well for THCV. It ended up over 10, 12, some of them even 15% THCV, and little or no THC. I mean, like 0.0.
So I met up with Paul Daly a couple months back at his place in Oakland. So he's working at Doug's Varon with David Lampak there in Oakland, California, and
their varieties only half as high.
So
and it has more THC.
Yes, exactly. He showed me their distillate was. I want to say it was like
interesting work, and I'm surprised it's taken 10, 15 years for people to catch up with our work.
Yeah, so I think if I remember correctly, it was like 50% THC and like 35% THCV in a distillate that's made from that plant material.
I understand, but that's not a particularly great ratio of. I mean, if you're after THC with it, it's great. But if you don't want THC, if you want just the THCV, then
I think it would be really cool to breed a plant that didn't make the C5 at all and just made C3 and C7, right? Right? Just breed the THC out and just make the P and the V.
What about CP3O?
If a synthase produces the cannabinoid, which is the case in these, then that means it can be bred to be more. Instead of 1%, you can get it over 10, 15, maybe even 20. I mean, with THC,
see, I'm not sure it's a particular synthase though, Sam. I think it might be the promiscuity of a mutant synthase, right? It might just be changing the substrate specificity.
So you think a synthase that already exists is creating multi-products?
That's right.
Well, that's certainly a possibility.
Yeah.
But then you just got to figure out a way to tweak it.
That's what I'm saying. This is like a jigsaw puzzle
but you're
for
presuming,
modern. This is
you're
a jigsaw
presuming one way. I'm presuming the other way.
This is a jigsaw puzzle for modern biotechnology, and what underpins it is really valuable intellectual property.
Well, there's a dozen companies worldwide that are trying to produce GMO cannabinoids, mostly CBD and THC, but they're aiming at them all. And so far, none of them are able to produce it cheaper than, as people are saying. The CBD market.
Who are some of those companies, Sam?
$2,000 a kilo for distillate. Well, the same thing's going to happen. That's because it's really cheap to produce stuff with plants.
So who are some of those companies, Sam, that are doing that?
Doing synthetic?
Yeah.
I have a list of them. Send me an email, and I'll send you the whole list of all the companies that I know that are working with.
No, I'm just fascinated. I mean, the notion that you can brew cannabinoids versus growing them. You know, just the notion that you can brew it, you can brew and use fermentation.
Some of the folks that I was closest to was the folks at Dartmouth University in Germany.
Okay.
And they published 4 or 5 papers on producing CBD. But I went there and visited with Rob, and what we saw was they also have the ability to put in a suite of cannabinoids with a suite of terpenes, all in the single yeast.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. When they told me that, I said, Jesus Christ, you are going to compete with cannabis. But so far, nobody is producing cannabinoids for CBD for $2,000 a kilo in vitro.
Well, I definitely met a group in this last year that were very interesting. I cringe personally when I hear about synthetic cannabinoids and people making them. I like the idea of
synthetic.
This is biosynthetic.
Yeah. These are full on like chemical, like synthetic, like this.
I can't believe that's going to be cheaper than growing it in a vat or in a plant.
Right.
Maybe
you're talking about different compounds, right, Mark? You're talking about completely different.
No, I'm talking about this group. You know, I'm under NDA, so I can't talk about too much, but I can say that they definitely have.
For example, Mark,
or you could talk.
They start with Alibitol, which that costs $30,000 a kilo. Last time I looked.
Yeah, these guys aren't doing that at all. It's something totally different. Their quote is, "We built a better mousetrap."
Wow.
And it's very insane. Now for me, how I didn't like support it, but how I kind of got around to actually listening to it, because like I said, my skin starts to crawl. He was like, listen, like, we're not interested in taking over, trying to compete with plant-based compounds. What we're trying to do is build the better mousetrap so that we can produce novel and unique cannabinoids so that science can get an early step on studying them. You know, ones that are not available in larger numbers right now.
If they're creating new ones, they'll also patent them, Mark.
They're not talking about creating new ones. They're talking about creating ones like THCP. Or before that, like maybe a THCV or a CBG, one of the ones that are more novel, one of the ones that are less available by the ton, maybe even other more novel ones, CBC or CB. I don't, this was what they were talking about to get.
CBG will be as cheap as CBD in the near future.
Well, it's not right now.
No, I understand. But you got to remember, CBD a decade or a decade and a half ago was $100,000.
And it still is today in some circles.
Okay, well, not many circles I know.
No, it's the pharmaceutical circles. If you're a pharmaceutical company purchasing CBD actually and produced in a GMP facility, and your company's in Germany, trust me, you're not paying $1,200 a kilo. Trust me. They pay
No.
a huge, ridiculous amount of money. And I'm glad that CBD is $1,200 a kilo personally. Wonderful.
No, it was the cheap price I heard today was 2,000.
Yeah.
For what?
It's
CBD?
Yeah.
Oh, I can hook you up for 1,200, man.
You can? See, there you go.
Yeah, but it's that 99% distillate. What is it?
Isolate.
It's what percentage?
99.8
Yeah.
or whatever. I don't know. Like it's isolate. Whatever the
High,
most.
white crystalline
Really?
solid.
Yeah.
I mean, Marcus, then you agree? You agree with what I was saying about that about that price going down, and that a lot of people who got into the hemp industry, so to speak, this year, kind of like really, lost their shirts because, again, I think they were based on what isolate prices were going as little as 12 months ago. My God, I was seeing stuff going for like $75 to like, $9,500 a kilo for several, tens of hundreds of kilos. So, I mean, I don't think that this was a one-time thing. I think it is like a supply demand. So a lot of people grew. So there's this huge supply. The ability to process that supply is not where it needs to be, but I think was really enhanced in the last, say, 2 years. In those seasons, a lot of processing capacity went in. You saw what Chris Baroni is doing. He's down in South Carolina. Oh my God, the size of those wipers are like 4-story high, and they have distillate flowing out of that thing like a volcano.
Oh, I saw.
Unbelievable.
It is unbelievable.
When you have that level of production capacity, certainly supply-demand economics, there's going to be a huge supply. I think people who are speculating and buying from Joe and selling to Bob, it's become a very, it's just, the market just tanked. Market tanked.
Yeah, not here. Our market is kind of jacked and weird and controlled, and we need to, we need to deregulate it while still maintaining some of the important regulations. Because I have kind of put together the fact that, they were mentioning it in chat today, that if some of the food people started, actually if people started testing what's in their food the way they do their cannabis, I think they would be absolutely shocked, shocked. So maybe that aspect could kind of leak over into food, and we could start, figuring out ways and solutions to keep poisons and toxins from infiltrating our air and our food.
I think you're mistaken, and most people just don't give a fuck. Most people in America want cheaper prices rather than safer food.
Yeah, but that's just, America's only 300 million people, and there's 7 billion the last time I checked in the world. So they're a very small percentage of the actual population of the world. They're 5%.
And we're not really America. We're the United States. It's different, folks.
Right. Yeah, we won't get into that. Holy shit. Tell you, we still got some folks hanging out here. How many people have we still got here? We got a good crew here. All right, I put it on full page. We got Jack still in the house, Johnny B and Colin and D420K, and Etienne's just got a beautiful, I should have just put his thing on. It's just like a beautiful view. That is nice.
Hey Marcus, I heard that solvent-based extracts are now okay in Canada. Is that right?
Yeah, they have a whole list of what you can and can't do, and mostly it's all hydrocarbons are allowed, and ethanol is allowed, and so people are jumping on that. There's already probably, I would say for sure, multiple licensed production facilities. Well, for sure, many running CO2, many. Some running water extraction and dry sift. Already now rosin. I seen an LP the other day posted. I actually had to do a double take, and I should have, kept the picture because it was a giant jar of just, golden amber rosin. And it just, to me, just looked like, one of the beautiful jars of one of the many hash makers and oil makers that I follow on Instagram. But then I caught a look, and it was a licensed producer in Canada. And I was like, whoa, holy shit, awesome. That's kind of crazy. Yeah, I was awesome. It kind of brought a smile to my face. It's like, we need to get these fucking products into these very slow going
into our hands.
It's incredibly slow going system in Canada. And it's very easy to kind of spend your time trying to fight it and argue with it and moan and bitch and whine, or you can do like Jack did and just be like, I'm just going to create a different system that just operates sort of parallel, and hopefully they'll just allow
Marcus,
it.
Marcus, is that all being produced by batch production, or is it also being produced, any of it, continuous production?
I would say it's batch for now, but I mean, that's what they're all trying to build. A lot of the bigger ones are trying to build to, have it that sort of conveyor belt, like they're consistently growing. Everyone in Canada seems to think that being vertically integrated and growing everything and processing everything, we're a little different. We just want to process. We don't want to get into growing it or anything like that. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't have a very big importance for having relationships with tissue culture companies that we can share with our potential customers, where, they can go and save 15% of their room that currently is being mothered into bloom. So now they're generating revenue that will not only pay for the tissue culture plants that will come much cleaner, totally, initiated of all fungi and bacteria and viruses. To us as a processor, that's a huge advantage, but we don't want to have to, we want to facilitate, oh yeah, here's a tissue culture company, here's some genetics that you can have. We'll be at the back end if you want us to purchase some of the material, or if you want to create a partnership where we collaborate and do something together. And we just really want to offer processing, because the complexity of growing cannabis is just not something that our company is interested in focusing on.
I tell you, if you're smart, you'll stick to what you're good at.
Since you're offering processing, just because solvent extracts are now available, are you going to start doing solvent-based extraction at Embark?
Embark, absolutely. That's what Mike is going to be doing at Embark. Mike West, who's now not in the room anymore, but yeah, that's his sort of wheelhouse. Right away when we got the idea of Embark with the two other founders, Michael and Bruce, my partners, they approached me. They said, "Yeah, you're the hash guy, you're the extract guy. We want to bring you on." And I kind of had this, epiphany of all these different stories from people curing their cancers and putting cancers into remissions with different solvent extracts. It couldn't be ignored, to the point where I had to get over my own ego and be like, look, I want to focus on solventless. That's what I love. But I have all these colleagues and people that I know in the industry, and it was very easy to call Mike up and be like, look, would you be interested in coming over? And, and then my other partner in Colorado, who's been doing cryoethanol for 5 years and producing, lots of CBD isolate, he was interested in having a project in Canada. So I thought, look, you can be this guy. I was talking to Indra for a while about his units for Embark, because he had been so known in the industry, and he had started, that whole process. So it was very easy for me to just be like, look, I'll focus on my wheelhouse. I'll do water extraction, dry sifting, and wet washing. But why don't we create a quiver? And this was kind of my idea from almost the very, very beginning, that we do, ultrasonic cryoethanol, we do CO2, we do hydrocarbon, we do dry sift, we do wet wash, we do rosin, and we even do terpene extractions. So we have this quiver that's available. I thought, just from a data standpoint of processing for multiple growers and multiple, licensed production growers and craft growers, that we would create an incredible variety of data that in connection to the tissue culture companies could really start creating a beautiful landscape for easy navigation on, oh, well, this LP wants to grow specifically for dry sifting. Oh, well, talk to Seger International. They're a tissue culture company. They've compiled all of this data together with Embark, and there's 4 pages of their menu is cultivars that are specific for dry sifting, and then getting into the nuances of, well, what does that mean? Well, it means that those cultivars are going to produce a higher variety, a higher ratio of capitate stalked trichomes and sessile stalked trichomes, and less of the bulbous ones that sit on those single stipe cells and tend to not really effectively come off in in both water extraction and mechanical screen separation. So things like that, I'm super excited about.
Cool.
Cool.
Mark,
Yes.
Marcus,
yes.
what's the highest extraction rate of resin cleaned up 99 that you've heard of from a variety, dry sifting? Water hash, you said you've gotten.
Well, here's the thing. When I don't, unfortunately, don't dry sift enough from plant matter. What I do is I dry sift from farmer's grade sift. And because I'm missing the initial ratio of what, I always know, like, okay, like from most material, I might get 20% heads out of, farmer's grade sift. That's high. That's like a good one. Now, from really like, higher end material with a real, maybe in a tumbler like the great gardener Matt Barron would do, if he just did a quick like minute or something, it could get to be 50%. And he was growing fairly well, and that 50% heads would actually produce a pseudo melty product. And, if you're doing a trim bin and trimming over it without even touching it, yeah, I've seen it come out in the 90s. But how much of it do I get is impossible for me to know, because I only know from a kilo of sift. If I get a kilo of sift and I work with it to clean it up.
No, I understand completely.
Yeah.
It's still pretty far out that cannabis can be cheap enough that they can afford to dry sift it, because it's much more, you get much more cannabinoids and active terpenes, et cetera, by almost any other method besides dry sifting.
Well, and it's like, it's the system the plant set up to store those compounds in. So the micro-encapsulated resin gland is my favorite form of having hash in, just like little dusted, just scoop it out with a little scooper and you're good to go.
I like them when they're cured a little bit so that they're more like a dried raisin rather than a fat, juicy grape.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But then again, you have some. Did you ever test the percentage of terpenes that were in like the skunk or whatever? Like that's not a 1 to 3, is it?
I didn't I give you the list one time of all the terpenes?
I'm not sure. Maybe I just don't remember what actual percentage. Like the skunk hash.
But I mean, it wasn't enormously high, and I don't remember what the difference was between skunk number 1 herb and skunk number 1 farmer's hash, because right. I tested both.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to find out the herb. I would think it would be over that 3%, like maybe even 3.5.
Oh yeah, well, it might be close to 5% or whatever, but it's. I mean, I've heard rumors of 12 to 15. So from dried herb.
I've never heard anything higher than 10, but maybe
okay, but think about 10 already.
10's insane. That's what I'm saying. And then we talk about like extracting that and making a high terpene, where you're fresh frozen or you're freezing it before you're doing, you're preserving every last terpene. That is, you're bumping those terpene contents high.
I sometimes wonder if you're saving too many, or if when you're curing, you're getting rid of some of the more volatile terpenes, and maybe they cause problems. I don't know.
Who's to know? Well, shit, I want to say one more time, I want to talk about the need to grow just briefly. I'm going to share it with some friends. Tanner, who was a part of the need to grow, it was, I think, a big part of it, like a director or a producer or something. He sent me an email. I guess he's watching, or my friend from Calgary's watching. He said that he'd love to come on Hash Church and talk about living soil and the differences of the living soil and big ag, and he could bring the director, potentially the green powerhouse inventor. There's this guy who creates this powerhouse generator thing on this film called The Need to Grow, and you can check out The Need to Grow at earthconsciouslife.org. I think it's like, I don't know, a few bucks to watch. Definitely worth it. There's some super inspirational shit in that film. I watched it this last trip to Calgary, and I really, really enjoyed it. It was just really positive. So I wanted to mention that one more time and get, I'll send you guys the link here in the chat room. And then actually and then here's the password right here.
Oh, I just saw it.
Just keep that personal to yourselves, because they are, raising money to pay for their project, and I'd love for people to support them. But that's going to be a Hash Church coming up. I also dropped a photo for the promotion of Hash Church. Thanks to Matthew Tanner for doing that. Devolved Media on Instagram did our little hash picture for the Hash Church episode this week. And in that post, I mentioned, hey, tag your favorite hash maker. So for all of you hash makers that got tagged in that, I will be hitting you up one by one and sending you a link to a meeting room that I'll have set up on my Zoom. It's not going to be filmed or live, but I want you guys to come in. I'll probably have some of my panelists linked up in there as well. We can fit like 49 at a time now, so it's pretty gnarly. We're going to have to learn to not talk over one another, but I want to have a conversation with all these hash makers. There were so many of them, and I want to kind of suss out a really great conversation, maybe for next week, maybe for 2 or 3 weeks in the future. We do have Lyft coming to town in here in Vancouver, which is a big event. I've got tours at my facility in Delta, and I'm going on a couple of tours of producers here in British Columbia. So I will be fairly busy, but I'd love to keep consistent with Hash Church and get another episode. I don't want those hash makers to think that, because they didn't get on this week, maybe that's what they were thinking. I haven't forgotten about you. I think it's a great idea to stay connected to all these people who are actually getting their hands dirty in regards to producing full melt hashes and solventless rosins and all these other products. I love the idea of having another episode that's just really focused on hash, the thing that, of course, I love so much. And this is Hash Church. So I wanted to
need more hash.
Yeah, we need more hash, Johnny B. And Johnny B and I are going to be filming Puff Wednesdays, hopefully once a week. So I mean, last week we filmed it. It was pissing rain. We ended up under a fucking like bridge dash road in West Vancouver. And it was kind of funny because the quote of the year was like, well, we have legalization. Johnny B was like, we have legalization. And then my quote was like, yeah, we're standing under a bridge. Like, that's where we're puffing with our legalization. So yeah, we're going to be doing more of those Puff Wednesdays, and Hash Church I want to stay consistent with. 3.0, we'll see how many we can get in the bag for the year 2020. And I guess thanks to everyone for coming in and sharing, Jack, thank you, dude, for coming in. If you guys want to hook up with Jack, I will link you up with Jack. You can hit me up. I can link you up with him on Facebook. I can link you up with his, I'm sure he's got a phone number or email and some other stuff and websites that I'll put in the comment section of the YouTube video. And then I'll post the video in the Facebook group Hash Church, and we'll put not your phone number and stuff, but your email and stuff, so that people can do good and help you.
And just thanks so much for having me in the private chat. I put up a link to our website so that any of you can go have a look at what that is and explain that to the people you have in your own network, so we can just hopefully keep this as a ongoing conversation. And since you and Johnny B aren't that far away, maybe you could come sit in our smoke hole out back of our cannabis program for one of your Puff Wednesdays or something.
Dude, straight up. That's what we're doing.
You're right beside the old Bunk City, aren't you? Because I saw
you
were setting up. I was there about a couple months ago. I saw all the stuff in there, the candy machines and stuff like that. I was looking in the window, but you weren't there. So
it's funny that capping, the capping business is that's my landlord owns that, and we were blacklisted here in Victoria by all the big real estate companies, and so we had a cannabis activist who his kid ran the Bong City, and so he rented our administrative office is above the Bong City. It's a beautiful old Victorian like apartment, and then we have that North Park, which was the Dank Bank and trees and a bunch of other we cleaned it up a bit and made it into a nice outreach space, and I dropped a sea can out back So every day we have support groups and cannabis education groups back there where people can keep dry. And I built an overhang so that there's an outdoor smoking area. Since we're allowed to not get away with a lot of things, I'm trying to push the boundaries of what we can do to make people comfortable in the community.
Beautiful, man. I fucking love it. And I'll definitely be having you back on to update us. And Johnny B and I will come out to Victoria and do a Puff Wednesday with you guys over there.
Oh, right on.
That'll be a legit Puff Wednesday. That's going to be the best Puff Wednesday ever.
Oh, yeah.
All right. I want to thank Dr. Mark for laying down some super knowledge today. We superly appreciate you. He's on Facebook. He's on Instagram. What's your Instagram? Like ESBEAU or something?
Yeah. Remember when we used to all have pen names, right? I was Mark Esau, like the Grateful Dead song. My brother Esau. So MB Esau.
All right, cool. And then,
hey, Mark, I wanted to share one thing with everybody.
Please.
I took a full-time position with a company called BR Brands, effective January 1. So I'm now their chief science officer.
Congratulations.
And, we're the company that owns Mary's Medicinals. You may have heard of us.
Yes, I tried to get a conversation going with those guys to get them up in Canada, and man, they just could not answer the phone.
Well, now we can lubricate that discussion because.
Well, that's amazing, dude. That's amazing. I wanted to figure out a way how we were going to work in some way, and that would be a very cool way to work with you in the future.
Well, I have it on my radar. I want to come up to British Columbia, and I want to go trout fishing with David Lemieux, who's the archivist for the Grateful Dead, and also visit all my friends up in Canada. So I have it on my list of things to do in 2020.
I got a fishing guide for you who does nothing but trout fishing and stuff up on the lakes up near Merritt. He's a very good friend of mine. He grows some of the best weed in Canada.
We'll look forward to hosting you up here for sure, Mark. That'll be amazing.
I can't wait to visit. It's such a beautiful place in the world that I haven't been, and I need to go.
We'll give you the tour of Embark. Skunkman Sam, thank you as always. A pleasure hearing you drop knowledge bombs as well. And Johnny B. Wade Laughter, we didn't get to see you, but we certainly got to hear you, and that was a real pleasure. You got a nice, soft, kind voice, and you didn't say much today, but I did appreciate the few things that you did say. And
I would chime in for a second.
Yes, please.
Just say one of the things that's on my list this year is to renew my passport so I can come see you all up there.
Hell yeah, Wade, we'd love to have you up here.
Getting around. Yeah, looking forward to it.
That would be amazing. And bring Forrest back.
That's a hard story right now. Silas is struggling a lot, and I've seen Forrest maybe 3 times in the last 4 months because, as he tells me, he's trying to keep his son alive.
Yeah,
he's going through puberty. He's got type 1 diabetes, so trying to keep him fed and his blood levels, glucose levels in check and all that. So yeah, I'm totally supporting him trying to do that. Keeping Silas alive seems like a really important work at the moment for him. And doing what I can to keep the families that were involved in the Cladrius network provided. The medical thing in California is really blown apart, kind of tragically. The collective model, there's some room with the donations, tax relief and whatnot. But anyway, I don't want to go down a long rabbit hole. I just want to thank you again for doing the church, and thank all of those folks who offered their point of view and their voices to what we're talking about, because I really do think this plant is the healing of the people. And on that note, Happy New Year.
Thanks, Wade. Appreciate you. I'm going to reach out to Forrest and see how I just at least to send him some positive words and, let him know that we're always thinking of him and figure out.
Did I send you his new email?
You did. I appreciate it.
Okay.
I'm going to send him an email today. So
sure.
Much love. Yeah, Etienne, thanks for coming out as always. Enjoy the tropics, man. It's absolutely beautiful. Thanks for sharing that with us.
Absolutely, and I have some exciting news. Berkeley Patients Group has a new location that's coming in 2020. We now have it, now we just have to build it out, and we'll have a bigger location again. So good things happening all the way around.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, and you can find Etienne at ATN420 on Instagram. That's correct, right, Etienne?
Nice.
Congrats,
Yes,
ATN.
the letters ATN 420, not spelling out my name. It's just the letters ATN 420 at yahoo.com. So much love, everybody. Have a happy new year.
Beautiful. Thanks, Etienne. D420K, thanks so much, brother. Good to see you, dude. Haven't seen you really once in the new year, so this was our first time getting to share a bowl. We'll have to have many more in the new year.
Yes, sir. Anytime, brother.
And Colin, thanks for coming out, dude. Maybe next time we'll get you to tickle the ivories for us. Can't be coming in with oh, you're on mute. Can't be coming in with a bunch of pianos and expect not to be.
Thanks for having me as always, man. Yeah, we can get into some hash next time, and love to talk about what I've been up to.
You can check out Colin at Vessel Life Science on Instagram. And Johnny B is 420 Weedmaster. Weedmaster 420 or 420?
420 Weedmaster.
420 Weedmaster, exactly. I mix those up sometimes.
And 2020, for me,
420K on Instagram.
There's Darren.
D420K on Instagram. Don't you have a D420K on Facebook too?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
All right. Well, I'm BC Bubbleman on Instagram, and this is Bubbleman's World, and I really appreciate everyone for coming in. We're gonna stop the show.
Thank you.
Thank
you,
Peace,
buddy.
Yeah, for sure.
Have a good day, brother.
Peace, everybody.
Thank you,
Peace,
buddy.
everybody.
Peace.
See you next week.